to those in the audience. Today is Friday, December 20th. This is our bi-monthly Central District Board of Health meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we'll have roll call from Ada County. Dr. Cole is absent. Dr. Furch. Dr. Young.
Yeah, here.
And from Boise County, Clay Tucker, who's also absent. From, excuse me, from Elmore County, Commissioner Rogers.
Here.
And Betty Ann Nettleton.
Present.
And I am present from Valley County. I think we do have a quorum. So we will proceed. And maybe some of these others will join in later. Okay, at this time, everybody's had a chance to look at the agenda. Is there any additions or corrections? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Got a motion, a second to approve the agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Hey, great,
Yay.
welcome.
Sorry, I'm tardy.
That's okay, we're just glad you're here. We've already taken roll call, but we'll change that.
Okay.
We are actually at the 8:34 agenda item. This is an action item. This is the vote on the October 18th Board of Health meeting minutes. Any concerns or changes? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve those. I have a second.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the October 18th meeting minutes. All in favor, please say aye. Aye, motion carries. Go sign. Okay, well, those guys are signing. We're gonna move right on down. At this time, I would also, before we move on any further, I'd like everybody else in the room to introduce themselves, please. Whoever wants to go first.
Beth Fallen, XCS Division Administrator.
Laurel Gerhard, Support Services Division Administrator.
Everybody knows me. I'm Betty Ann Nettleton, Elmore County.
Corey County, the A2 for Sports Service.
Okay,
Curtis Lovelace, Division Administrator, Community and Environmental Health.
and I'm Bill Husband, Valley County Commissioner.
Ross Duke, Director.
Jane Young from Ada County.
Greg for Ada County.
Crystal Rogers, Elmore County Commissioner.
Well, welcome, everyone. We're gonna move right on down. The next agenda item is not an action item. This is an introduction of Family and Clinical Services Administrator. Russ or Beth, are you taking this one? Who's doing this?
Well,
Or both?
I could start, you just give some background on Beth. So she joined our team on Tuesday, November 12th. We had a holiday that Monday. And Beth is our new Family and Clinic Services Division Administrator. So she oversees WIC, medical, behavioral health, community outreach, and our 2 home visiting programs and oral health. So it's a pretty broad portfolio of our clinical services, including in-clinic, community outreach, in-home, and then we do a lot of other functions out in the community, like with our vaccine, back-to-school vaccine clinics and things like that. So she is our first person we've had since I started in a leadership role as with a licensed clinical social work background. So it's nice to have that behavioral health experience and education, since it's a really important area and it's an area for growth for us that you all have been part of and helping support, and in some cases fund some new efforts. That's where I'll start reading because I don't have this part memorized. Holds a bachelor's in human services from Western Washington University, master's in social work from Colorado State University, and a certificate and women's leadership from Gonzaga University. She started her career in nonprofit behavioral health in 2005 in Colorado before moving to a school district behavioral health specialist position. Then in 2010, she found her way to Idaho and worked for Ada County Juvenile Court Services, which actually is a pretty strong partner of ours. We work with them with the kids that end up in juvenile detention, and then on some prevention programs we collaborate on to keep kids out of detention. And then most recently worked for St. Luke's on program management for their behavioral health line for the whole entire system. So Beth, you're welcome to add to that and share anything you would like.
Let's see, you did a pretty good job explaining a lot of my background. I think some of the other highlights I would say is that St. Luke's, I was able to be a part of their first pediatric behavioral health program. And so joined that team in 2013 and then got to see it grow and expand to what it is now, which is quite large. A lot of my background is also in the program development. We started our first partial hospitalization program for adolescents, and a big role in that, as well as the integrated behavioral health program with pediatrics as well as specialty care. So having an integrated behavioral health person in primary care. And then as a system physician, I got to develop a program called the Social Work Crisis and Consultation Team, which was providing crisis services across the whole system to patients who showed up at primary care who needed some of that support. Other things I did there was around addiction medicine, helping with that strategy. So that's a bit about what I've been doing the last 11 years, but I'm really excited to be here and see this team. I love the passion that the team has for public health and all the programs that they have. And I think we have a lot of potential to keep growing our team and our culture, and I'm excited to be a part of that.
Well, welcome, Beth. I think that's outstanding. I think there's a lot of potential for mental health and behavioral health improvements all throughout our system, including, inmates that are getting out of jail and all that kind of stuff. So if there's anything that you need from us, just let us know. Okay, any more questions?
Yes.
Hey, then we're gonna move right on down and keep on going. Oh, hey, Dr. Cole, I see you're here. Can you hear us? Dr. Cole, can you hear us? Apparently not. Dustin, is he muted? Hello, anybody home? Oh, he's muted or what?
The AI.
Hey, Dustin.
Dr. Cole, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
There you are. Welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you. I wish I could be there, but I don't want to get anybody sick for the holidays.
No, we don't want that. So we can change that. Okay, we're at our 8:45 agenda item. This is not an action item. This is a financial report from Worrell. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Hasbrook. So this report is through the end of November, about 42% of the way through the fiscal year. Well, I'll be glad to know that I have yet another LUMA issue to talk about as we go through this report. So if you look at the revenue on page 1, the top part of the report, you can see that for the first time in the 4 years that I've been in this role, our revenues are slightly behind our planned amounts. And if you're wondering if that has anything to do with LUMA, the answer is yes. So we got some communication from Health and Welfare shortly after the last board meeting that for intercompany billings, we no longer needed to enter them into the LUMA system. We could send them directly to the agency and they'd be processed that way. And that did not work for the system. They need to go through LUMA to be processed in LUMA to be reflected accurately. So for the last 2 to 3 weeks, our grants and contracts person in the finance unit has been correcting all of those intercompany billings that were sent directly to Health and Welfare and not. So that lag in revenue is primarily in the contracts section. You can see that there is the one area that's behind where we expect it to be, and that's all intercompany contract revenue that we would normally have gotten from health and welfare at this point of the year. So the good news is it's been corrected. We are not going to try to do any of the intercompany billings out of the system. Did it at the direction of health and welfare, but will not be going that route again. And it's really an attempt to figure out how to work the most efficiently in Luma. Unfortunately, it was an attempt that didn't work. So for the time being, continue to enter everything through Luma first and make sure that it shows up where it's supposed to. So by the February board meeting, that will be corrected. But it does show us a lag, and we'll see that throughout the report today. We continue to see that there is an increase in our fee collection revenue, so that's good. Our negative amount in support services and administration in other, one was due to a rent reversal and one was a miscoding of trustee and benefits. So talked to Conan about that this week, and nothing to be concerned about there, but it looks sad to see negatives in the revenue section, so I wanted to explain that as well. Looking at our expenditures, we're just slightly behind where we plan to be for expenditures, coming in at about 40% of our planned amounts. Same thing we saw in October. Support services operating is the only thing that's over planned amounts in a way that draws attention to it so far this year. And mostly that reflects equipment expenditures that we will adjust for when we do our budget revision before the February meeting.
Question before you move on, Laura, I'm assuming you'll get county contributions will come in the end of January or February when they collect.
Yes.
more taxes. So we've got 40% now.
Yeah, and we've talked about it a few times before in this meeting, but the counties are on their own schedules for when we get those revenues in, and we know what that is. Everybody is on top of it, and it just comes in at different times based on the counties and what their budget planning is.
But I think it's kind of interesting to bring it up. I don't know about your guys' county, but we're noticing this year that there's less people paying all their taxes. More people are waiting and gonna do the second half of June, which tells me the economy's kind of getting tight or something. After today, yeah. Yeah, we'll see two up there, but it's kind of going.
Will you look at the credit card debt?
Okay,
Moving on to page 2, looking again at our fee revenue, we're ahead in both community environmental health and family and clinic services. Community environmental health, we're the only program food is a little bit behind where we were last year, but we're in renewal season now. So by February, we'll see that big jump in fee revenue for the food program. And then same trend as we saw last month and before for this fiscal year in family clinic services, both central care and home visitation have pretty good increases compared to where they were this time last year. Looking at our contracts, there again, you see the decrease based on what we talked about on the first page that we're behind in collecting our contract revenue from health and welfare. Those numbers should rebound and return to normal before the next meeting. And in the October meeting, last time we met, we were ahead of where we were for the last 2 years in contracts, and there has been hardly any change because of that intercompany billing issue. Okay, and then personnel costs, continued trend there. We're under what we plan to be for personnel and over where we were planning to be for operating. Those two balance each other out. And then for trustee and benefits and capital outlay, those are two things that aren't evenly distributed throughout the year. So we typically see underages and overages there and then get pretty close to where we plan to be by the end of the fiscal year.
good question before you move too far on. Under reproductive health, do you think that's gonna come back up? I guess what the base of my question is, the new legislation where kids have to bring their parents involved under 18 to get is that starting to show up now?
It could be reflective of that, yes. I don't think we know enough to determine whether it's a trend related specifically to that or just a decrease in reproductive health services. Sometimes it also reflects a lag in fee collection on those services. So we'll pay attention to it. Right now, it's about 13,000 behind where we were at this point this year, so it's not a significant change, but we'll continue to track it and see if we can notate any trends there.
So I think this is the kind of stuff we need as far as data for the counties to go after some of the changes in that legislation. We need to have something, numbers behind us to show that kids aren't involved with reproductive health because they don't want to tell mom and dad. I don't know,
Yeah, we can dig into that further.
home visitation is way up.
Yes,
Awesome.
Yeah, it is good.
very positive trend
Okay.
there. Okay, moving on to page 3. Cash balance statement, where you're gonna see the last evidence of the issue we talked about on page 1. So overall, we continue to have a very healthy cash balance of 10.3 million. Looking at our reserve fund designations, no change there since the October meeting, but there has been progress on every one of the projects. So we did have our kickoff meeting with Excella. They were actually on site 2 weeks ago. So the project is ready to begin. Curtis is going to be our internal project manager on that huge shift of our environmental system from our old in-house system to Excella. So we continue to work with the change management with staff and communicate with them what a good positive change it's going to be digitizing, modernizing all of those processes, but it will be quite a significant change. So Curtis is geared up and ready for that. We haven't received any invoices yet for that, so we haven't made payments, but it is in progress. The retention incentive will be paid out before the February meeting, so that will see big change, go down to 0 before then. Our staffing needs, the parents as teacher positions, one has been filled, and the Valley County parents as teachers position closes Monday,
January 5th.
January 5th. Okay, so it'll open a little bit
We have
longer.
somebody for there?
We have got several applications
Oh,
in that look
great.
very promising. Yeah, and as you guys all know, the McCall positions are usually harder to fill. So to already see having the position open 2 more weeks and having 5 candidates that look qualified and good options, yeah, definitely positive thing there. And that'll be first time parents and teachers has been in Valley County, so we're just really excited about the ability to do that and that the board authorized that as a special project. For a bathroom remodel, the bids on that closed January 10th. We had the job walkthrough last week. So last time we put the bathroom remodel project out, we only got 1 contractor who bid on it. It was more expensive than we wanted it to be, so we canceled it at that time, moved it forward to this fiscal year. This time we had 2 contractors walk through, which is twice as many as we had before. So we'll see what the bids come in at and then decide how to proceed after January 10th. So by the February board meeting, we'll know what we're doing there as well. And then for the McCall office refresh, there's still no timeline on that. Still planning to look at that in the spring of this year. Reserve funds have stayed the same, 6.6 million. Our restricted funds are at 4.1 million. And that does leave us an undesignated, unrestricted cash balance of a negative 531,000. And again, once that contract revenue comes in, that will also change back in the positive direction where we usually are. So that's the summary of our budget.
Laurel, in the McCall office, is there room for your parents as teacher person? Do they have an officer?
Yeah, we have plenty of space. We've got a couple of unused exam rooms and then some offices that are used either intermittently or are available. But yeah, it does have space to accommodate.
Any more questions for Laurel on that?
I will say that we had a major contract in Elmore County. The contractor that actually won the bid didn't do the walkthrough. So you never know. The walkthrough, they wanted to, but they were late to the game. They ended up interesting. So you never
So
know.
who knows? Yeah.
No.
Well, it's really great to be in a position where you have more contractors bidding on jobs, you have more people applying for jobs. There for a while, we didn't even have anybody wanting to apply. That was tough. So turning around.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Laurel, on our operational reserve, is that still adequate for the changes in costs?
Yes. It is the adjusted amount based on this year's budget. We did that at the August meeting, adjusted it. Yes.
Any more questions for Laurel? If not, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is an action item. This is employee allowance guidelines. Turn that over to you.
So this is, we have two handouts in your guide, or in your packet, sorry. One is the employee performance recognition and incentive allowance guideline that was originally approved by the board in 2013. This is what we've been operating under for the past 11 years. The second document that you have is our proposal for what we would like it to move to. And a little bit of background of why we would like to shift to the updated amounts, that we had a couple of pretty significant retirements this past calendar year. And in the cases of those retirements, we found that the lower amounts for refreshments, a lot of people fall into that under 20 years with Central District Health, $75 for refreshments isn't enough. And it didn't allow us to provide a retirement that was fitting to the service that was provided to the agency. And so we would like to move up the refreshments allowance for retirements to 200 for everybody who retires, regardless of their years of service with us. When we put this initial guideline in place in 2013, we were still using the credited state service system. So a lot of people have careers with the state before they come to Central District Health. So many people would end up in that higher year range. And now that we're just looking at Central District Health hours, a lot of people are retiring maybe 19 years with us and 10 or 20 years with the state prior, but we're only looking at their time with CDH. So again, that having that lower refreshment amount just wasn't enough for celebrations that we wanted to be able to have for people who had dedicated long amounts of time to the agency. And then the top part of the document is our current recognitions and incentives that we do throughout the year. And that amount has actually gone down compared to where it was 13 years ago. We've changed a little bit what some of our recognition and incentive programs are. The total cost to the agency has gone down. So we were excited to put that together and see that there is a little bit of cost savings there. And we've trimmed some of the programs that we do, and we've increased the CDH apparel amount, and that's based on a couple of changes. We're going with a higher quality clothing item, so we've now provide a scrub jacket for our clinical staff, and then for those who are in the field, we have a heavier weight quarter zip that they can wear with our CDH logo on it when they're, Corey's got one on today. And then the other polo on. And it's, all 150 of us get one apparel item per year, wear them in the community in places where we're building trust and able to wear the brand out and about. So we feel that higher amount on our CDH apparel has been well worth that increased investment there.
And 1 year, I think the board got closed too.
That's sure.
I remember that. That was pretty nice. Mine shrunk in laundry.
Yeah.
It's all the time.
So yeah, today we're
This
the board.
is the next time, so we're basically voting on the new guidelines, is that correct?
That's correct.
Any questions, comments?
Oh, shocking. I have questions. So what types of things are included under the wellness incentive?
Events that people do in the community, such as yoga classes, races, paint the town, anything like that. People can have up to $50 reimbursement towards activities that promote wellness, wellness clothing items. So we get a lot of reimbursements for running shoes, athletic clothing. It's up to $50. It's $50 maximum. And employees submit receipts related to their wellness activities or clothing items. And we reimburse those on a per employee basis of up to $50.
Do
per
we
year.
do memberships in gyms?
Yes, that could be included.
So are we losing the specific incentive for the flu shot?
Yes.
Um, has there been any thought about rewarding certain metrics? You know, I've read a number of articles that in some states, they were rewarded, or more specifically in this case, not penalized if they reached a certain body mass index reduction percentage, or, you know, like I would envision a lab test that shows a certain level of vitamin D, you know, actual measurable health markers that really impact and demonstrate an improved measure of health. Has there been any thought in rewarding something like that?
For our internal incentives, recognition incentives, no, we have not gone down that road to consider any options like that. I know through our insurance, they offer some incentives and free items if you reach certain markers or participate in certain activities or can demonstrate health behaviors. Not sure exactly what those are. So some are offered through our insurance. We haven't at this point considered anything internally, but be open to some ideas on it.
Would this be like somebody that's, say, has a high body index and comes in and I'm gonna go on this plan and it may cost me $50 to do this plan, you're saying we could.
Not necessarily. That's the specific case that I'm citing was the state of Alabama. And it's at the time was considered the most obese state in the nation. And that was having a tremendous health impact or health insurance cost impact on the state employees or the state employee health insurance system. And so at that point, they were taking an additional $25 fee out of the employee's paycheck if they were smokers. What they were considering, and the premise of the article was to take an additional $25 fee if they didn't show a certain reduction in body mass index. Now that's the negative reward, and sadly, psychological studies show that the negative reward generally motivates people better than the dessert of the month club. But nonetheless, you know, when I read through this, I just wondered about reporting actual measurable markers like, you know, BMI or vitamin D levels. There's a huge study out of the VA that showed if you had a 50 nanogram per deciliter vitamin D level, it had an enormous reduction in COVID morbidity and mortality by having that minimum level. And if we're going to be the central district health, you know, rewarding things that literally measure health might be an idea.
It's an interesting idea. I guess my concern, are we violating any HIPAA laws doing this?
No, not at all. I mean, if people want the incentive, they can show you a lab test if
So they sign up for these.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you have lab work done and you get a vitamin D level and you can show that, hey, I'm taking my supplemental vitamin D, I'm staying fit, or, you know, in this case, with the state of Alabama, that's what they were considering with the BMI. And if they did not want to be penalized, they had 1 year, as I recall, this was about 20 years ago, I read the article, but they had a starting BMI and they had 1 year. And if they showed a certain percentage reduction in that year, they did not have the extra $25 taken out of their paycheck. Or that was the game plan proposed in the nexus of this article.
So I'm assuming, Laurel, then that we would advertise, hey, if you want to do this, here's how you sign up. To whatever the issue is. I mean, how does that work? How do you do that?
I don't know how we do that internally. I think, again, our health insurance has been pretty successful in doing that. They do mailers. I think the most recent one I saw was, you get incentive items for participation in a pelvic floor health, app, and you get items for doing exercises and participating in it that way. So they regularly offer incentives for items that are heavy costs on insurance. How we would move that to an agency level, again, haven't thought about that so far. I think we have a lot of wellness promotion and health promotion. So we take our 15-minute breaks for group wellness walks at set times throughout the year, where you can meet as a group and do that. Promote lunch workouts, lunch groups that are out walking and things like that. We have our fitness room, so we do try really hard, not necessarily reflective in here, but to promote those health behaviors throughout the agency in terms of measures and paying people for that. I think your example of the state of Alabama was through their health insurance. So to do it just in the workplace.
That was
would be
just
to-
state payroll. And not, I don't believe that was necessarily through the insurance. And again, I'm not necessarily discounting
Yeah,
any of the other things at all. I just wondered if possibly adding a couple of measurables, in addition, certain metrics that,
Maybe figure out what the insurance is providing.
Yeah,
Give us an idea
there's
of what
a gap.
that looks like.
so is the CDH insurance, is that piggyback on the state? So now it's Blue Shield here with the CDH.
You know, I think it might, like, hey, maybe you can come up with some ideas for a list. And we could work on this through the winter and see.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm just,
stressed about not doing the flu shots. Why isn't that kind of a standard practice for?
We are still offering them for free for employees. We do a couple
Okay.
clinics a year internally for that. It had just fallen out of practice to do the $10 card, $10 card for it. Yeah, we did some additional research on the receipt of gift cards, and I mean, you claim it as income, and there's tax issues that go along with gift cards. So we've stopped
Right,
all the
right,
gift
right.
cards internally.
Good.
Yeah.
Gift cards can be a kind of an issue.
so from a scientific measure, that a vitamin D level of 50 vastly more effective than the flu shot.
I think it's something we can certainly look at if you want to come up with some ideas. Come back and
Sure. I just
get
didn't,
added to the list.
I mean, being the new one, I just didn't know exactly what was involved in the measurements or metrics that we're currently using. And the other thing I would just like to ask is, what is Cotton Act?
Oh, yeah, happy to talk about that. So when our employees see other employees doing things that are above and beyond, or significantly impact the quality of their work or the interactions that we have with the public, they nominate their coworkers for a Caught in the Act award, which just includes a laminated piece of paper that tells what they were caught in the act for, and then they can choose a protein bar or a candy bar of their choice, and it gets presented by Russ and their supervisor. And people really appreciate it, and there's a lot of recognition of things that would otherwise go unnoticed. Over the last month, our whole janitorial team, each member of it was individually recognized for the work that they do to keep our spaces safe and clean, and really impactful to them. They hadn't received awards for what they do when they show up every day before. And so it's really nice to be able to see people receive that appreciation from their coworkers, especially when they don't expect it, like team did.
I think it's a good morale booster. I know in my grandson and their in Cascade schools, they have a Caught in the Act program and they're issued a star. And then after semester, if you get, I think it's 8 stars or 10 stars, you get like one of those big fancy mugs.
Hmm.
And it The kids are loving it. My grandson comes over every time. It's another cognac.
That's pretty neat. I would have nominated those two young gals that were working the hockey game a year ago. Well, they were super at the hockey game.
We can take board nominations for Cognacs too. So we can make a link available to you for that.
And then Laura, I wanted to ask you on the all staff meetings of 12,000, is that for the annual? meetings?
Yes, yeah, and that includes food for the 150 staff members, it includes the location we're at. If we have a speaker, it includes that, and it's a tight ceiling to work under if we do bring a speaker in or something like that, but we try to stick to that pretty closely.
Well, that was my question, if that was enough.
It has been the last few years, but we do come pretty close to it. But yes, it's been workable for sure.
And I would really recommend to all the board members, when we have that, everybody come, it's really, there's, you know, you don't even know 10% of the people that work until you go to one of those. See all these people out here, and we employ a lot of folks. Good way to meet staff and have a lot of fun. And they do a great job.
Is that one time per year?
Just one time per year. And that's another thing, what used to be twice per year, we cut that back to once for savings there.
Okay, any more questions on this? If not, I guess I'd entertain a motion to accept the new employee performance recognition and incentive allowance guidelines versus the old one, if everyone is good with it. Have a motion for a second?
Second.
Who made the motion? Ed, you got it? Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve the new employee performance recognition and incentive allowance guidelines. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
So now we can take 2013 off.
Yep.
Second page is the.
Just pass the typo in a bit.
We're done. Good, good, good. Moving right along. Okay, we're gonna move on. This is also an action item, the health district compensation philosophy and guidelines. Mr. Duke, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what this is, I guess, to give some background on this, up until House Bill 316 passed, we were, as you, those of you who were on the board then, prior to that, no, we were very much under the management and, dare I say, control of the State Division of Human Resources, and the moves that we made for pay, for job reclassification, for promotions, everything ended up running through the state. That is no more, and we have been continuing to operate under the guidelines we use when we put proposals together to send over to the state for review and approval. What this is the effort to make our process more transparent to our staff and also have the board approve these guidelines. So if you approve these today, with or without edits, then we'll ask our chair to sign them, and then they'll be published for our staff to be able to see how we're making decisions. So that's the background. Thanks to Mike Savoy of Valley County. Mike is our HR manager.
Yep.
And he used to work at the State Division of Human Resources. So he's familiar with how that operated and functioned. And when he worked at the state, one of his assignments was were the public health districts in Idaho. So he's very familiar with who we are and what we do. Anyway, so he shared this, and we structured this based on what you have in place for Valley County. So what I want to do is take a little bit of time and review this with you, and then ask for your approval, or certainly if you have questions or any edits, I'll take those. And again, it's setting forth not necessarily a formula. It's not overly prescriptive, but guidelines around these various areas. So pay philosophy, we make sure individuals are compensated fairly. This is in section 1. Without regard to race, color, religion, sex, including pregnancy, sexual orientation or gender identity, national origin, age, disability, genetic information, any other protective factor. And you'll notice there's always the budgetary consideration clause. So when we make changes on a larger scale, not on an individual hire or reclassification or promotion, that always comes before the board. And that's through the budgeting process, and we'll begin at the March meeting, April meeting. And April meeting is when the board approves it. And then in May is when our county commissioner or budget committee approves it. And that's when we implement the agency-wide pay changes. So responsibilities, it's me, district director, with approval from the board, has the overall responsibility for implementing and administering the policy. So you would be essentially authorizing me to continue doing that, what I've done through the signature of approval and signature on this policy. Classification of jobs. One of the things that we looked at with the new, with the change of Idaho code that transferred that exclusive responsibility over to the Board of Health and to me, was should we look at a different job classification system? Should we go out and have somebody assign new pay grades? And as we looked into that, we actually did use somebody to make sure that what the state is doing using Korn Ferry is accurate and reflects the market here in the Treasure Valley. And we determined we did that 2 years in a row. And you probably remember Robert Grifford came in. When I say remember, I'm not sure who was here at the time. It's been a few years. Came and presented to the board, and that was a validation that what the state is doing works. And then the job classifications actually work quite well for us too. And if we were to go out and try to do that on our own, it'd be extremely expensive. And then to try to keep up with that, where we're paying a consultant to adjust that, versus we actually just use what the state has, and there's no money changing hands to do that. So it works really well for us, and it's what we've had in place for about 50 years in terms of that structure. Salary pay range assignments for new or reclassified positions. That's item number 4. New positions may be added at CDH during the annual budget process with approval of that. They might also be added with the acquisition of new grant funds. Generally, those are brought forward to you all. We got a new grant, we hire somebody, create a new position, and we hire that position. We're not FTE, full-time equivalent, full-time employee restricted like the state. Dr. Furch, you probably remember the legislature, each agency got a certain number of FTEs. We hire staff when we get new money, keep the board informed of what we're doing and the work that they're doing, or cases where we have to reduce staff because a grant goes away, and we do that throughout the year. The part that you're involved in is setting the budget. You probably will recall there is the FTE count that you get to see part of that budget approval process, and any changes that occur to that at that time. Item number 5. So this is an issue that has come up on and off throughout the year. So we knew it's really important to define it as I got my master's degree, so can I get a pay raise? I got a certificate in, can I get a pay raise? And the answer is no, we don't do that. Great, you got a master's degree. We actually provide tuition reimbursement to help support education of our staff in a field related to the work that we do. But there are exceptions to that. And the best example is in environmental health. We do hire environmental health specialists in what we call underfilled positions. Bless you.
Thank you.
And that is, we hire somebody before they are a registered environmental health specialist and have a certain number of years of experience, because it's not uncommon. That's who we get to apply for positions that require that higher level credentialing or experience. So we'll hire them as an environmental health specialist 1, as an underfill for environmental health specialist 2. When they obtain that registration and years of experience, we change their pay to move them into that different pay range. So that's like I say, the best example, and we're doing that.
those are listed somewhere in that pay schedule, like if you're a road tech 1 and you go to road tech 2 or
Yeah.
road tech 3. This is what's gonna happen if you do, but if you go to college, you get your master's, that doesn't affect anything here. You have to define those
Yeah.
next steps in the schedule so they know.
And we're doing this for the McCall position because we've tried for the environmental health specialist position because we've recruited and offered hiring bonuses and moving expenses, and we still have had zero luck. So we have an individual here in Boise who is not yet credentialed at the level we need to be a senior for the type of work they do. So when he gets that, he would get an extra pay bump. Rates of pay, number 6, rates of pay for each pay grade are set at levels comparable to those in the prevailing labor market. And that's what I talked about. We use the state of Idaho's compensation system. Korn Ferry has done, I think, an excellent job because we know with inflation and wage growth that needed to go along with that, they've been changing the pay ranges every year for the last 4 or 5 years. Long time ago, they didn't change it. It's you were kind of questioning, is it with it remaining stagnant, you just get further and further behind. I mean, it's pretty rare. There's no need to have a change in pay ranges, other than it did happen in, you all recall, in 2008 with the housing recession, and it was pretty stagnant. We didn't provide pay increases here to our staff for 2 years. That's kind of an exception to typical wage growth. Pay raises. So pay adjustments are typically awarded at the start of each fiscal year. That's what I talked about. It built into the budget process that you all approve when you approve the budget, ultimately approved by the county budget committee. We have done this where we'll implement them a little bit early. If we have a lot of carryover money is generally generated with people leaving their positions and then a gap in time to get those filled. So that's salary savings. And then it's not uncommon either. If you have somebody who retired from a position, when you bring somebody new on, they come in at a lower pay rate than what we have budgeted. So that's salary savings. We implemented two pay periods early, and I know staff appreciate that. And it's that one-time money salary savings. So it's not an ongoing liability, if you want to look at it from that perspective, from a financial perspective. Pay rate approval procedures for new hires, promotions, demotions, and other significant changes in duties. So this is something we've changed up a little bit because it was not uncommon. Staff who are internal, we would give them maybe a 10% increase as the cap for a promotion, or no less than 80% of the policy for that salary range. And we had some changes here recently with some promotions, and how those turned out was we questioned if they had applied from external and we just saw their resume, what might we offer them based on what they bring to the job? What value do they bring to the job? So this provides us in leadership a little bit more discretion to make sure we're treating people who have been employed here at CDH the same as we would if they were coming from external. And that feels a lot better to our leadership team. And I know it will be good for our staff to make sure they're getting a competitive wage and in a sense not penalized to a certain threshold because they've worked here with us. In fact, it should be just the opposite, right? We're trying to retain our staff and create a structure that will allow us to promote from within and also treat them fairly when it comes to what compensation they would get.
Chris, before you go, so just like your case where you can't find a guy at McCall, we went through this quite a few years back in our dispatch center. We could not find enough employees to run dispatch. We need 8. And we were down to 3, and we had to go to Adams County and contract them to cover our dispatch. And we just finally bit the bullet and said, we're going to raise the beginning salary to X amount of dollars so we can encourage, and immediately filled up. The issue there is, well, all these other departments, well, How come we don't get a raise? And that's the challenge as well. We're short dispatch. Maybe we need to look at the job description or the pay rate to encourage more people applying for it. And kind of bit the bullet, it did it and it worked. Does this allow you to do that?
It does, and that's where, back to that, rather than trying to come up with a formula basis, if we have certain positions where we've recruited, put it out for 2 weeks, and that's for the Boise office, and another 2 weeks, and then by the time we get to the third 2 weeks, we start making changes. We start offering on, what you hear out in the private sector, sign-on bonuses. So we'll create an incentive, and of course, we're not going to pay them day one and have them leave day two. They have to stay for a certain period of time, and then they're eligible for that incentive. So we've had to do that for certain positions, just like what you talked about. And it's also a conversation that we have with the members of the staff here sitting over there and myself. We want to make sure, you're always going to have some turnover, but what's an acceptable level of turnover? And we tend to have higher turnover rates in what we call our entry level positions. They're often lower wage, and with the labor market as it is now, they would leave for $1 more an hour. And that is, number one, it's disruptive to our operations. If they're serving clients like medical assistants or clinical assistants on the WIC side, that's not good. And then you got all the training involvement. So those are things that we constantly look at for the same reasons. But and you have the same challenges, like, well, I'm in that same pay grade, but I work over here. Why don't I get that same pay increase that you've just given to those staff? And that's where we have conversations about, do we feel good about this? Do we feel it's justified? And I can say to somebody, if we raise the entry level wage, we're not changing the pay structure, we're just raising the wage that we're going to offer for that entry level position, because we're going through a tough time right now with turnover and inability to hire. We do that. But there's always you can see item A there, number 8, is internal equity. Occasionally, we'll also do equity adjustments where if you make a change in the pay you offer for more of an entry level position, you have 3 other staff that have been in that same role for 10 years, and you bring somebody in that's starting to push them on their pay with very little experience. That doesn't work either. So we'll sometimes do those. Yeah, for obvious reasons, right? Okay. Good comment, question. Transfers, number 9, we just almost always we just call them lateral transfers. So you move from one pay grade to another pay grade, unless there's something really unique about that. Program manager 1 supervising 2 staff moves over to program manager 1 position supervising 20 staff under their structure. We would consider giving them a pay increase, even if it's the same pay grade and pay range. Job reclassification process that does occur, where somebody's job over time has evolved enough that the job classification that they're currently in no longer fits the majority of their duties. So we'll reclassify them into a new job. That can also result in a lateral. It might not be, it's change of duties doesn't mean necessarily an increase in level of responsibility, but it's not uncommon for them to move 1 or 2 pay grades upward. And in that case, we'll provide them, evaluate, the value they bring to the job, look at their resume, experience both here prior to coming to CDH, and then adjust their pay accordingly.
So before you move, so if you have someone that has been on a 3-year grant and the grant's ending and they're good health, you want to keep them around, this is what you would do. You would change their classification to something else in the group and move them to try and keep them, or how does that work?
That can occur. Or because you do want to keep them when we have another position that comes available in maybe a different division or another program, we encourage them to apply for that. So it's not always just, we reclassify them, because if we don't have the work to do, like the grant ends and the work ends, we're no longer getting revenue. It's pretty rare we lay somebody off, but we we've had to do that. We had to do some major changes in 2009, 2010. Dr. Young and Betty Ann will remember we eliminated entire programs because we lost $750,000 in state general fund. So there was nothing we could do with that. So I mean, that's more than what you asked, but reclassifications generally occur with an individual whose duties have changed significantly enough in the same, they're still in the same program area that we move them into a different job classification.
I think that kind of helps. I was thinking of, what was it, Alexis that started,
Which thing?
yeah. And now she's moved on to different, whole different group, but to me, when you find somebody that's really good help, like I know in our case, we had a grant drive for the county and we really liked that person, we wanted to keep on staff, so we had to create another position. We made him basically an assistant grant writer, but we had never funded that position. And so we built that and put it into our salary schedule, and that person started there. And then 2 years later, got a similar grant and moved back over and ran it. It turned out great. But you gotta have that flexibility.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, when we have good staff and a lot of our agency operates off of grants. And some of them like WIC, that's, since 1970. Other ones, we had a WIC outreach, very successful WIC outreach grant, and that was an 18-month grant. And the person that was leading that did a really great job increasing our WIC participation numbers. So as it was coming to an end this past fall, we established a community outreach position. That's one of the programs that reports to Beth. Yeah, and it makes sense to do that. We had funding to make that happen.
Well, and the thing that keeps going through my mind is, with President Trump coming on and goals to cut federal government spending, we may see this happen to some of our programs here. I don't know. Just have to see what they deal with this, but
yeah,
I think as long as we communicate and keep the board involved and keep everybody involved, that way it doesn't put all the heat on you or your leadership team. If we have to start a RIF program or whatever, I think that's beneficial. Don't take all this on as a district director by yourself.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And speaking of grant writers, we hired one that's amazingly proficient at getting new money. So that makes it better for us because we're bringing in new money. And as new money, as one grant ends, we've been very successful in essentially replacing that. Some of those skills are very transferable, like if you're a health education specialist or health education specialist senior, whether you're doing vaping prevention or you're out working on suicide prevention, those skill sets are very transferable. The last section is section 11, temporary acting assignments, and we've set that at 30 days. So it's if somebody's out for 2 weeks, maybe they went on vacation and you're going to ask somebody to fill in. We don't bump their pay, but when they're longer term, like 30 days, that's the threshold we picked. And if we ask let's say a registered nurse in our medical clinic, and they're having to do the duties of 2 people, or maybe they're doing the duties of their manager for 30 days or more, we'll bump their pay by 5%. So they're taking on more work. We're not asking them to work excessive amounts of overtime, but it is increased responsibility, and that temporary merit ends whenever those duties end, and then their pay gets adjusted back to where it was before. And that's worked really well for us. I mean, it's just a way of saying, thank you for helping us out for this interim period of time.
Well, down here in the last sentence, you talk about if assignments become permanent, the same rate increase will be used as a permanent change.
Yep.
But shouldn't that be the salary or whatever that person they're replacing is?
It would. So if you have, it's a.
Did I say that right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it depends on when an employee is asked to assume additional duties beyond their normal scope. So that's not necessarily taking on duties that of it, not necessarily of another position, but they've increased their level of responsibility for a period of time. And we may not refill that position. So sometimes you have an individual who will take on the duties of another coworker and then realize that that person can accomplish all of those tasks. That's when we would make that permanent.
So like if you have an FMLA person out on having a baby or a health issue,
Mhm.
and someone replaces them for 12 weeks, this would qualify them for that.
Right? If they cover their duties and doing their job, and then that would be an example.
So then if that person that's on FMLA decides not to come back, maybe their health gets worse, then you go out for that job, or is that person replacing them automatically get it?
Rarely would that person replace them on a permanent basis. We would refill that position.
And they could apply for it.
That individual could apply for that job.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Yep.
That would start on day one.
The
new responsibilities are on day 30.
it would take place on day one, but there have been instances where we think it's gonna be 2 weeks, and then it's 3 weeks. And once you hit that 30-day mark, what we've done is we implement it then, and we figure out what that individual would have received in pay at that increased pay rate for those 30 days, and we write them a check.
Okay, you had a question?
Yeah, so if someone takes over for, let's say, someone on extended leave,
Mhm.
and then person comes back, is it difficult to, if they've gotten comfortable for some number of months on the higher wage to, it's kind of that old adage of taking the sucker away from the kid?
Yeah. So what we do at the start, we make it clear, this is temporary. They sign an agreement, acknowledge this is temporary and it will end on this date. We usually pick a date and then if it needs to be extended because it continues beyond that period of time, then we'll reissue the temporary merit document that I sign and the employee signs. So is it hard? Probably. Yeah, we get a pay increase, but they know it on the front end when they voluntarily agree to do this. So good question.
But it's really great to have two people who know how to do that job.
Right.
Yeah.
That builds its value. That person's gonna want that job if that person ever leaves. I think it creates a lot of great cross-border training, so to speak.
Yeah.
On-site job performance and at home. Can you comment on what we're doing there?
The job performance, whether you're working.
Whether you're here doing your job or you're working from home?
So we have, I don't have the number or percent, but it's a pretty small number now. Most of our employees have been back in the office for years, right? Not years back beyond into the COVID days. Every employee gets an annual performance evaluation and managers are encouraged and should be meeting with them on a monthly basis. But that's the formal review. And whether you're working remote or you're working in the office, it's the same form, same conversation, same documentation with the 3 tiers of does not achieve, achieves, or high performer.
So is there a minimum requirement to be on site?
I don't think we
Yes, there's some discretion that different program managers have, but each program manager who has some staff working from home sets either 2 or 3 days a week in office. I don't think there's any that are less than 2 days a week in office. My team, there's some that have 3 days a week in office, but as Russ said, for the most part, most of our staff are here, and it's only if their positions can be fully performed from home that they are allowed that privilege. They also sign a telecommute agreement, which makes their schedule clear. And it states in there, same thing, we try to be as upfront as possible, that it can be revoked at any time. So if there are any performance issues, we take the telecommute agreement away and reestablish what they need to do for the performance to meet their goals.
We have certain positions where it doesn't make sense to have that person drive to the office and then drive back past their house to go to a home visit, for example. And our home visiting team just joined us for Nurse Family Partnership. But those are the kind of positions most often, and they'll have team meetings are expected to be here in person. And for one-on-one meetings with their supervisors, there's lots of reasons to have them here, but it's not an efficient way to run the business of people who are mostly out in the field. Those are the ones that tend to work more remote hours than most other staff. But I know, heard just with the federal employees and the plan with those positions. So I like to think we have really good oversight and our program managers who have employees who work remote. From what I've seen, they do a really good job with their oversight, connection, and outcomes. And as you will hear from our Nurse Family Partnership team, it's very numbers based. So if you're not seeing a certain number of clients doing a certain number of visits, Jerry Davis is here we got a swimming pool conversation coming up. He's up in Boise County doing septic systems and complaint investigations,
Sure.
And his supervisor would know if that's not getting done, because there's a certain number that have to get done every year, food inspections. So anyway.
Well, given my trip here this morning, I'm in favor of keeping as many people off the roads as possible.
Yeah. I can relate.
At least you didn't have to come from Winsberg.
Yeah.
All the traffic from Winsberg.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
So,
It counts.
thanks for your questions and comments and thoughts, and I'm asking for your approval of this. It's something that, like I said, we've continued to modify based on how things have changed, but I wanted to have this be formal document that we could share with our staff so that they can see very directly how we're making our decisions. And there's a certain amount of discretion built into this, and that's where Laurel, Curtis, Beth, and I, feel comfortable when we make these decisions. And if we're a little bit uncomfortable about them, I don't know about uncomfortable, but just need some feedback, then we work collaboratively. Usually all four of us will sit down and maybe talk through a decision, because we don't want people feeling slighted. It's, like I said, that have been here for longer periods of time than others. So we try to be very thoughtful. I request your approval.
Before we vote on this, I have another question is, would it be wise to have each employee sign this? Once we put this out, so they have read this, they've seen it, sign it, it goes in their file. I know we would do this at the county, just make sure that they had a chance to look at this. And it goes in their file, so they can't come back and say, well, you didn't tell me this or that.
Anything specific bringing this up right now?
Yeah. That's a good question. So we've had guidelines, and some of you remember Janet Peck when she was our HR manager a lot of years, and she kept the guidelines in her office and would sit down and review those with the managers when they were making job offers. And then that continued with Gary Foote. And there's been a desire of staff to understand, like, well, why did you give this person this much or this person this amount? And we've always explained it. Well, we usually do this amount for promotion. Okay, but Sally didn't get that 7.5 years ago when she got promoted. And it was more my desire to say, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're doing it. And our board has approved this per House Bill 316 to work with the board on salary changes. So that's why your signature's on it.
Well, and I think it's just a good, wise decision to, the more you're open to the public and your employees, the easier it is to solve.
Exactly.
the problems when they come.
Answer to sign here.
Yeah.
I mean, that would make sense.
So I think, as far as, this whole philosophy, I think it's a great philosophy. I think we can prove it today, but I would add to the motion that each employee get a copy of this and sign it and get it back to HR so it can be in their file.
Okay.
So that we have a record that they've seen this. That makes sense?
Absolutely.
Okay, so then I would make sure, this is an action item, so I would entertain a motion to approve this philosophy and guidelines for compensation.
Sorry, and to have them sign, the employees to sign it.
Well, I think we need to add that to the motion. Whoever wants to make that motion.
I move that we accept the compensation philosophy and guidelines and ask each employee to sign it for their file.
Second,
Second.
any more discussion? Dr. Cole, can you still hear us? Any questions from you?
No questions. I agree with that. I like the idea of having the employee have a copy of it and acknowledge it. So on board.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. We sign this one. Actually, vote on this one. So let that be. It's a lot of work.
Signed and notes.
No, I mean, put this together. Actually, at the county, I have a stamp. I just click the note and all done.
Yeah.
Or,
Where's my signature in months?
Stamp.
You need to turn your nameplate around so you get it right.
Yeah, but sometimes it doesn't quite look right. Didn't know who's it for.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on. The next item is not an action item. This is just an informational from the Nurse Family Partnership Program. Lisa, Hillary, and Brenda, you guys want to come up to the table, please?
You want them to all fill in?
Sure. Pull up a chair and
Okay.
come on up and join us.
Here you go. Sit.
Some days are thank you.
Right here, beside Brenda.
So whoever wants to lead this discussion, I'll hand it over to you.
That's gonna be me. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
you're Lisa.
I am Lisa. So my name is Lisa Watson. I am the program manager for the Nurse Family Partnership Program here at Central District Health. And these are both my fantastic nurses. I'm gonna let them introduce themselves.
I'm Brenda Alvarez, and I've been with Nurse Family Partnership for a little bit over a year.
I'm Hillary Chitwood. I've been here about 4 months.
Brand new, you haven't even been scratched yet, huh?
Yeah, she's doing amazing though.
Good.
Very well, very good. So I'm just here today to kind of tell you about the Nurse Family Partnership Program, just a little bit, tell you where we're at and where we want to go. So first, I want to thank you all for giving the Nurse Family Partnership Program seed money to get this program started. This program has such life-changing results that have been seen across the country, and super duper excited that we have it here at Central District Health. So just in whole, Nurse Family Partnership is a home visiting program that pairs a specially trained nurse with a pregnant mom to provide her with support and guidance and the resources she needs during her pregnancy and until that child turns 2 years of age. In order for one of our moms to be eligible for our program, they have to be a first-time mom. They have to be pregnant and at time of enrollment, less than 28 weeks pregnant. Okay. They have to reside in Ada County. Stop it. He knows why we're laughing. They have to reside in Ada County, and they have to meet low income criteria, which is about WIC criteria. They qualify for WIC, they qualify for us financially. Our nurses go into the homes or wherever the client wants to be visited every 2 weeks during that 2.5 years, with the exception of when we very first meet them, we see them weekly for 4 weeks. And then we see them weekly for 6 weeks once the baby is born, just to kind of develop a relationship. And then after delivery, make sure there's nothing going on in that high risk time. Our visits are normally about an hour to an hour and a half. And during those visits, we spend a lot of time just finding out what it is that they need. We're there to meet them where they are. We don't have an agenda necessarily where we come in and this is the visit, we do this. We come to them and say, where are you? What do you need to know more about? How can I help you to reach your goals and to be the best mom that you want to be? So that's what we spend our time doing there. We do screen for depression, anxiety, intimate partner violence. We're doing substance abuse, tobacco use. I feel like we do a lot of mental health care with these clients than anything else. We do blood pressures and weights on the moms during their pregnancy and early postpartum. We are weighing the babies, measuring the babies after they're born. We are assessing that they're growing, developing, and meeting their milestones. And also, I also forgot, I want to make sure they're going to all their appointments. So we are very much encouraging them to go to their prenatal appointments, go to their well-child visits. We are not the replacement for their OB provider whatsoever. So we're just there as an extra support for them. Our nurses also give them their work cell phone number. So they can call the nurse, they can text the nurse anytime during business hours, or even on the weekend, we get back to them during business hours. So just those regular, I don't know how many of you are parents, if you can remember being a first-time parent, the questions that you had, like, what's the baby doing? Is this okay? What can I eat? You know, all of those kinds of things are those simple things that everyone needs, not just these clients. That's some of the things we do, is help just reassure them and help them to be just more secure in themselves. We help them to be better parents. We talk to them about attachment, how to connect with their infant, how to read their infant's cues. I can't even, the list goes on and on about how much we do in this hour to an hour and a half. I mean, we could spend much more time there, but it's hard to cut us off at those times. So each of our full-time nurses, which each of these are full-time nurses, they carry a caseload of 21 to 25 active clients. Hillary is newer, so as per the NFP model, she is ramping up in her clients, so she can only take about one client a week. That way, when the babies are born and when the new ones come on, she's not trying to see a bunch of weekly ones because it's like we only have so much time in the day. So that's a planning thing. Currently, we have 35 active clients that we're all serving. I have a small caseload and they have their caseloads. This team enrolled our first client in January of 2024. Since then, we've had 16 babies, healthy babies. I think all our babies have been term, as far as I'm aware. And we have 10 girls and 6 boys, but we were way more girls for a while. So the boys are kind of catching up here right at the end of the year. And so I wanted to share with you a client story. This is going to be one of my clients. This is my only client that actually enrolled during pregnancy. The other ones, they were transfers from out of state, and so I picked them up as already born children. So this mom came to me with such high anxiety, history of mental health issues, depression, suicide attempts, all of the things. And she was extremely anxious about continuing with this pregnancy. She and her partner had made several appointments to end the pregnancy and had not decided to do that. But she was really, really worried about how this was going to affect her. You know, you hear about postpartum depression. That was something really on her mind. And so I started seeing her weekly, and the strides that I've seen by this pair, not just this mom, but by the pair and the family, are like so rewarding for me. And it's not even me, that I'm excited that every single one of our clients may be having the same, you know, life-changing things going on. So this mom has now delivered her baby not too terribly long ago. She is doing amazingly well. I started working on attachment with her early on so she could attach to that baby, since she was struggling with some of that, reading to her baby, talking to her baby and the partner as well. And she tells me how amazing this whole thing is, how glad she is that she is where she is. I did help her to identify that she probably needed to get started on some medication because of her high risk and the way she was feeling. So she did that, and she's doing really well mentally right now. The pair is doing really well. I feel like I do relationship counseling, believe it or not. Like, I'm like, men don't understand what it is that you want. So you need to tell him, make a list of things that when I'm frustrated, you want to help me. These are the things that would help me. So you don't ask like, what do you need? Because that never works. So it's just every time I go over there, it's like a pleasure to go over there, and I have to tear myself away from this family. And I get that they feel the same way about me. I mean, I truly have to work on my boundaries because I love them so much. And by 2 years, I can't imagine like that they just feel like they're part of my family. And this is not a standoff, like a one-off client. There are other clients going through the same benefit. I have the other one, the toddler, her baby was 5 or 6 months when she came to me, and that mom had so much anxiety. I've never, like, it was palpable. And for anyone, especially first time moms, when the baby comes, the stress that we go through, the massive anxiety about doing it right, and is this clean, and blah, blah, blah. She made me tired just sitting there in the room with her. And her baby is now close to 1.5 years, I would say. And just the other day, something happened, and I said, do you think back when you and I first met? Do you remember how you would have responded then compared to now? And she's like, yeah. I said, good job. Like, congratulations on such huge accomplishments. And so it's just, this program is super exciting for me. And so I want to thank you guys for bringing it here. My goals is obviously to grow the program and to get it into the other counties too. If it was I'd be like, let's go right now. A full team, just to let you know, for NFP, like with one supervisor, would be 8 nurses, just to let you know. So that is possible. If you were to have full-time nurses of all those, that's 25 a nurse. So that gives you an idea of what the possibilities are. And then I also am going to come to funding, right? So our ADA ARPA money is running out this month, at the end of this month. And then we had some SLRF money that will run out at the end of the fiscal year. And then from there, it's up to Russ. And then whatever happens beyond Russ. But we are billing Medicaid now. That's not something we were able to do before, or most of our clients didn't meet the criteria to be able to be billed for Medicaid. We have about 82% of our clients are on Medicaid. So that's really good for sustainability. So that is my program in a nutshell. I wanted to give them the opportunity to add anything that I may have missed in.
Did pretty well. A lot of these clients, like she said, we don't take the place of the OB, but a lot of them don't have the chance to go maybe to like childbirthing classes. So a lot of the things that we go over, we kind of touch base on that, and we'll check in with our clients and we'll ask them, how is the program helping you? Is there anything we can do better, just to kind of check in and see if we need it. So I think that's really good too, because it is based on what they're interested in and what we need to kind of support them throughout the program.
Yeah, I would add, I think one huge advantage of this program is the preventative side of it. And when we're seeing them regularly, we can do the screenings and education and, hopefully prevent some of those unnecessary ER visits that sometimes they just think, oh, I need to go to the ER. Not always, sometimes we can educate them to realize they don't need to.
Couple of questions I have. The first one, that being in this position, is safety of you guys. Do you guys feel safe when you're around going to people's homes? And has there ever been a concern?
I feel safe. We do have a safety plan in place. That basically says, all the visits are kept on our Outlook calendar with the name and where we're going to be. visits that happen outside of regular 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, because we are flexible like that. So we will do a weekend visit if they need it. We'll do an after hours visit. So the expectation is that the team is notified of that when it's outside of those hours. Normally that's me. I take that. And we have kind of like a coding system, like I'm entering this home, this is where we are, this is my, when it's scheduled. And then we have like, if you don't respond with this, after the visit, we will call 911 or whatever you have to do. So, and we have a little birdie too. I don't know if you know what these are, but you pull on them and they like scream like bloody murder and flashlights. So like if someone needed to do that as a quick getaway, we do that. And there's other things I have in their safety plan too.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Next question is, what are the other 18% doing that's not on Medicaid? Are they self-insured?
I do. So one thing about the clients, once they're enrolled, they're never kicked out. So let's say they start to become self-sufficient economically and they're not relying on any government assistance, they still get to stay in the program. So some of them are them. Some are undocumented, so they're unable to get that.
Okay.
And when their baby is born, oftentimes then we're able to bill Medicaid then. I think that's it, right? Any other, and secondary Medicaid. So we don't, if they have it secondary, we don't bill the primary, which doesn't trigger the secondary, blah, blah, blah. That's like outside of mine, but that's the other reasons. Yeah. Yeah.
I think, personally, I think this is an awesome program, probably one of the best. The big question is how are we going to fund this in the future? That's something that we need to look at.
And how are we gonna get it to the other counties?
Well, I think in
Right.
Valley County, we would like to have it up there, but we're mostly old folks up there. There's not too many single moms, although I can guarantee you that most dispatchers are single moms. It's a great job for single moms. But
Yeah, pregnant, you can't catch them after they have their child. That's the hard part with our program. That's where PAT picks up.
right.
Yeah.
So Russ, what are we looking at as far as dollars? Just off the top of your head real fast.
Well, I could talk more, not specific dollar amounts, but one of the things we were able to successfully do after a long period of time was to expand our ability to bill for the visits for the Medicaid insured individuals and families for all of them. And previously, we could bill for fewer than half. So we were, call it leaving money on the table. We remember our former board member, representative, I guess she still is today, Megan Blanksma, helped us push that through initially to get Medicaid coverage.
Right.
And then the state Medicaid and state public health determined the clients needed to meet 3 or more criteria, which didn't really make any sense because they're high risk or they wouldn't qualify for the parents as teachers and nurse family partnership program. Anyway, that finally got approved where if you meet the eligibility for the program, then we can bill Medicaid for those clients. So you commented about the home visiting revenue when Laurel did her budget presentation. A lot of that's coming through now. And it's going to continue to increase because this is pretty new that we started implementing that. So there's that. There's the state, I'll just call it home visiting, maternal, infant, early childhood home visiting grant funding from the federal government. That is supposed to increase over the next couple of years. There should be increases in that funding. And that's trying to figure out how to divide that among parents as teachers and nurse family partnership. So we got Medicaid revenue with significant increase that we're going to generate through that mode or method. And then we'll have federal money that we'll be receiving. And then part of the county contribution, we can figure out ways to, how that gets allocated across the agency during the budget setting. And there may be some money available to help support nurse family partnership. And then there's also grants that Bill Schnupp, our grant writer, can assist with. It's not always ideal, right, to operate these programs just on grants alone. Possibility to use some opioid settlement money. When Lisa spoke, talked about behavioral health and mental health, but there's also individuals that we serve who have substance use disorder. And that's another means to tap into that money. Essentially, a lot of different funding streams coming in to make the program whole. And as we continue to grow, those are just things we'll evaluate and keep the board informed. I'm not concerned like, oh my gosh, we're not going to be able to grow. I think we will continue to grow. And as long as we maintain a pretty good balance of Medicaid and non-Medicaid, meaning the majority Medicaid, that will help with sustainability.
Well, and I think with the bill that was passed last year with, parents, kids having to notify their parents under 18 of the issue, we're gonna see more of this. And to me, when we're going out to the counties this next year for the budget, we need to really emphasize that this is what we're doing in your county.
Yeah.
This is a great PR thing, I guess you might say, for health district.
During one of my calls with the Panhandle Public Health that has the other NFP up there, they said that they're seeing an uptick in teen pregnancies there. And then was it one of you that told me that they heard
The schools then.
the schools were saying that they're seeing it here? Because I wasn't seeing enrollments here upticking yet, but she said that the schools are seeing it. We have a 15-year-old in the program. So we are definitely actively going to those locations, and I spoke with the social workers at the Boise School District on Monday, presented the program to them, and, we're at like the Cardinal Academy and Frank Church and all that,
Have you guys heard of Jamie's Place in Valley County?
Yeah, somebody referred, what was it? I think it was Lisa Cardona said something about Jamie's Place, yeah.
And she's done a phenomenal job up there. The county even throws money at that to help some of those issues, but I still like Chrysalis County where you guys are using paramedics for a lot of that in-home.
Paramedic.
And we just got our EMS override passed. So that funding will start coming in next January, not this January, but a year from now. And that's my goal. If I have an influence at that time is to get that program started up there too. But there's, I think maybe what we ought to think about for us is, and maybe Laurel wants to do this, I don't know, to kind of look at how much money we're going to have to generate to keep this program going for the future. Let's get ready for this now and kind of plan on it if something doesn't come through.
Yeah, and one other, talking about Senate Bill 1329, the impact, what you're describing is happening in Panhandle Health District, what they're seeing with the increase in pregnancies, teen pregnancies in particular, is that the public health district directors have been talking about, we don't have an exact strategy, but that we receive state general fund money for this program. And as the need increases, we think it's appropriate to go back to the state legislature, not this year, we're not going to do it, but maybe next year, and ask for an increase in state general fund. These are preventive programs. There's so many benefits, short-term and mid-term and long-term benefits. And the work that Lisa, Brenda, and Hillary do is in direct alignment with Alex Adams, a new director for the Department of Health and Welfare. He has a wildly important goal, and that's to help reduce the need for foster care and increase foster parenting. And it's really all about child welfare. And it's like, okay, the directors talked to him about it. He was at the Idaho Association of District Boards of Health meeting. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity there to coordinate through health and welfare to get additional state general fund. So it's hard to get money out of the legislature, more money out of the legislature, but I think this is a really worthwhile effort. And I think we can demonstrate the outcomes and how this, the bottom line is going to save taxpayer dollars over even the short term. Like you have healthy pregnancies, you said they were all born at term, put one baby in a NICU for 2 weeks and see how that works out financially if they're covered by Medicaid. So it's a really big deal and a really successful program, proven for, I don't know, it's been around for 40 years. 50 years. So.
Yeah, and on the worksheet I gave you guys, it says that there's a $6.40 return for every dollar invested in Idaho NFP. I mean, that's significant.
Wonderful. Any more questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. When you have to, when that 2-year period is ending and you have some high-risk clients, do you work with a PCP in kind of saying, hey, we're done?
Our goal is to go to PAT at that point, is to then refer them over to PAT so they can continue with that kind of support. It's not exactly the same as ours, but it is continued support until the child goes to kindergarten, I believe. So, but other than that, we haven't really gotten there. We're so new. We haven't had anyone graduate. So we're kind of like blazing the trail on how we're going to handle this. I think, like I said, 18-month-old, that's my oldest, and I've got little parents as teachers thing stuck in my, in her file just for when I'm ready. And NFP does have another program, like they have a community where if you're an NFP mom, like all the NFP moms can stay connected. I think that's Child First, I can't remember. And then they do have something else too, but we don't administer that program here that I think goes beyond. So.
Because I think if when, that child reaches 2 and you guys are through,
Yeah.
wow, this 2-year-old, 2-year-olds.
Yeah.
You thought that infant was challenging?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's when I would go crazy. Just when they had 2. Well, Lisa and Hillary and
Yeah.
Brenda, thank you guys very much. I think this is a wonderful. Dr. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is a little in the weeds question, but what codes, what CPT codes, or what is the procedure you're billing Medicaid?
So as far as I know, Medicaid reimburses for a home visit at a certain rate. So it's $250.12, I believe. And so we just bill them for a visit. It doesn't matter if we count a visit a certain length. But it doesn't matter if it was a 30-minute visit or a 2-hour visit, we get the flat rate to reimburse to us. So
are there certain metrics that have to be met within a home visit, certain things that have to be accomplished in the code that's?
not that I have identified. I've been looking in the home bid, like in the Medicaid handbook as of late, because this is new to me in billing and trying to figure it out. I haven't identified anything specific, even the length of time. It doesn't, there's things like they can be telehealth. We did look and find out they can be telehealth visits. For us to have a completed visit that we actually consider completed, we have to deliver program content to them. So in our encounters, we, chart that we delivered program content, how far we traveled, how long it lasted. And then there's, I think, 5 areas like personal health, child health, my environment, community. So there's these like 5 criteria, and we have to give a percentage of how much of our visit went to each one of those categories. And then at the bottom, it asks if we screened them for needed services and if we did any referrals. And then we do another form for that if we did that stuff. So we don't bill unless we've done all of that.
And then in your story, you mentioned interacting with the father.
Yeah.
So is there a specific emphasis on trying to bring in the father at some point or initially, or how often do you get an opportunity to make it a team effort?
We want them every time if we can get them. And we encourage anyone to come in on the visit. So if they don't have the father or the father is unknown, maybe it's their mom, maybe it's their sister, maybe it's their best friend. Anyone that client wants to attend a visit can attend a visit, and it can be as many as they want. So the client I talked to you about, I think every visit the father has been there. And so I time it a certain way. So he's off work and that kind of thing. So we definitely make that a priority. We have special education directed just at the father. I purchased like dad's survival guidebooks, and so I give those out to all the new dads that need survival. In addition to like what to expect when you're expecting books that I was able to purchase, I give those to the moms, but the dads get their own books too. So we do absolutely frame the whole thing around them as a parenting duo.
You have one for grandparents too?
We have one for safe sleep for grandparents. That's about it though.
Just can't keep up.
They
That's what I'm
actually
saying.
say caregiver. I mean, my books are, but it'll say caregiver. It's to, to whoever that is, whether it's a foster kid
Sure.
somewhere else or whatever. And just as an FYI, if we had a mom that we were following and that child was removed from her custody, which we don't want to ever happen, we have the ability to follow the child where it went. So like with whoever that caregiver is, if it was the grandparent that took over care, we can then provide that same service to the grandparent to help them raise this child to be a healthy child, watch for all the same things.
And there's no income restriction if they're.
Once they're in the program, they're in the
Oh,
program.
okay, that's right.
So like they can even disenroll in the program. I don't know if they should all know this, but they could disenroll in the program and come back anytime in that before their child turns 2 and re-engage in the program if they want. So
One more follow-up question I have is, can you do anything for a second child?
not right now. So NFP has something they've been piloting in other areas called NFPX. And it does have some looser, loosey-goosey lot guidelines, like enrolling them after they've actually delivered the baby. And possibly for, yes, I think it is for multiple, subsequent pregnancies. They want us to be a nice established NFP program before they would consider, and there's a bunch of criteria you have to be doing before they'll consider letting you have that. But it is a possibility like going forward in the future that we can definitely expand that way.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions or comments?
It is
Thank you
amazing.
very much, ladies. Very awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we move on, we're gonna take a quick break. Dustin, can you just mute us or whatever you gotta do? And we'll be back here. Oh, let's shoot for about 10:20. If you need a break, this will be the Okay, welcome back, everybody. We are at I think we're at the 10, eyes on here. 10 agenda item. This is an action item. This is discuss and vote on the next regular business meeting schedule. That should be in your packet. Everybody get a chance. Let's take a little time and go through this and make sure that this will work for everybody's schedule. Kind of about the same what we did last year, but
Yeah. And the May board meeting is when we do the budget, but it's here. It rotates around and back in Ada County this year. So Ada County will chair it.
there's no concerns. Everybody take a look. No rush to do this. We gotta do this right.
I know I had to miss one because our commissioner meetings at Fridays. And there's a conflict with another commissioner. There's like 3 of us, so I'd have to, so I missed the one meeting.
Right.
Sometimes that happens to me. I am the chairperson this coming year
Are you chair this year?
of 25.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Or Mike.
We rotate. It's not, I don't know that it's an honor. It sounds like it's an honor.
It's like your turn now.
Yeah.
Really good practice. The 18th is Good Friday. We're still meeting. April 18th.
Mm-hmm.
That's still okay with everybody? Okay.
You could make it a gooder Friday.
Shorter board meeting that day.
I'm not sure that's a word.
There are a lot of things that are words, but
Almost done. Just want to make sure. I'm not a commissioner next year, so this is really opened up for me.
So,
But in August. No changes? Everybody's good? Last one in here, then we can. You know where. I think we use this next year.
That's a good question. So Commissioner Hasbrook asked about IEB, the abbreviation for Idaho Association of District Boards of Health. So it's hosted in District 3, which is Caldwell. More convenient for all of us, but they haven't set a date. It switched this year for the first time from June to October. So I'm assuming it'll be in October, but I'll share that with you as soon as I know.
spring break. Which school, I think it.
March, into March.
yeah, it's the last week of March or the 3rd week.
Public schools can be different than colleges. But it's like a spring break season.
Yeah.
March.
And it usually is that last full week in March. Last full week, usually. Our district.
Yeah, that would. Okay, if there's no changes or concerns, I would entertain a motion to approve this new schedule for calendar year 2025.
So moved. Second.
Ms. Wellner, so we have a motion and a second to approve the scheduling for the calendar year 2025 for this board. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Next agenda item, we're gonna keep right on going. Curtis, come on up. This is the Department of Health and Welfare's plan to eliminate the administrative code that provides a regulatory oversight for swimming pools. Okay, so I'll turn it over to you, Curtis. Welcome.
All right, thank you. And Dustin, do you have the presentation to display? It should be in your board packet. You should have slides for that as well.
He does.
Okay, great.
We have one.
Yeah, so I would like to walk through a couple different things today and share with you a little bit about what our inspection process is, why we do inspections, what we're looking for, and what the outcomes are we're trying to achieve. And then share a little bit about the historical perspective on what we've done with pool inspections historically, and then kind of what we foresee or anticipate occurring in the future with pool inspections, and then leave you with that information. There is no action item or decision to be made today. Mostly just wanted to be able to put this on your radar and let you be aware of something that we see coming up on the horizon. So that's what the presentation will be about today. I do have with me Jerry Davis and Joe Antonici, who are both registered environmental health specialists with the agency and have years of experience and are subject matter experts in pool inspections. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so the importance of inspections. Inspections occur with the primary intent of being able to assess whether an aquatic facility's operations and maintenance are within the criteria set forth by the jurisdiction that they're operating in. So for example, in the state of Idaho, we do have IDAPA code that regulates the construction, maintenance, and operations of recreational water facilities. And then that is governed by the Department of Health and Welfare, and it is designated to the health districts to be able to enforce those regulations. And so we have experts such as Joe and Jerry who go and travel throughout our counties to inspect the pools to ensure that they are meeting all of the specifications and requirements to operate safely and maintain the health and safety of the people that are using them. Really, our inspectors serve as illness and injury prevention advisors to these pool operators. That's the primary goal and function behind our inspections. It's not to be heavy-handed regulators who want to shut down businesses or anything of that nature. It's really to help operators successfully manage and operate their business in a way that will help maintain the health of the public that's enjoying the facilities. All right, next slide, please. So as you start to look at our pool inspections, there are 43 basic items that we look at when we do a pool inspections. Those 43 items are broken down into 5 main categories: health and safety, water quality, operations, mechanical, and construction. And you can see some examples of the things that are associated with each of those different categories that we inspect and look at as we do an inspection. For those facilities, under health and safety, for example, we may be checking to ensure that lifeguards are appropriately licensed and stationed, and that they have the appropriate emergency equipment, that there's the access to the pool is limited to keep people out of it who are not supposed to be in it, that there are adequate signs and markers indicating water depths and changes to the pool slope, floor, and other indicators like that that are important for people to know and see. Water quality is a major concern that we'll be looking for, and is something that can shut down a pool immediately if water quality is not sufficient. For example, if water is cloudy and you cannot see directly to the floor of the pool, that is criteria to close a pool immediately due to the safety and health concerns that poses and creates. Also, we want to be able to make sure that we can test the water quality to make sure that it's within the appropriate limits of disinfectant, that the pH, the alkalinity is all correct, and that it's suitable for people to be recreating in. Pools are required to provide test kits for be able to test the water in those situations and maintain that the water is appropriate. Under operations, we'll look at their operating plans, their record keeping process, the way that the pool is cleaned, the frequency, the way that the facility is ventilated to ensure that there's no issues with that. Dressing rooms, bathrooms, changing rooms are all adequate and kept clean and up to standards. In the mechanical area, we're looking at how chemicals are stored, the way chemicals are introduced into the water, the circulation of the water and how that occurs, how water is filtered and cleaned, as well as how any waste that accumulates in the facility is disposed of. There are quite a number of regulations also in terms of construction. Prior to the construction of any type of municipal or public aquatic facility, we will go through what's called a plan review with the construction group to ensure that they are meeting all of the required specifications, that the slope of the floor is correct, that the way the sidewalls are being constructed is correct, that the decks and the ladders are all in place correctly and planned to be appropriate. We want to ensure that the place drains appropriately in the event that it needs to, that steps in and out of the pool are appropriate for use and won't subject users to unnecessary injuries or anything of that nature.
Question, Curtis?
Yes.
Does that include the ADA chair?
I don't know the specific regulation that it does include, but we can get back to you and let you know for sure. I would imagine that it includes all aspects of the construction of the pool, including ADA, unless Joe or Jerry, do you have?
I think ADA's, I don't.
You see a lot of these pools now that have an electric chair that
Yes.
people over, but looking at them, it's like, I don't think that thing works anymore. They're pretty rusty sometimes. Okay, thanks.
Are hygiene signs part of a requirement, like in the locker rooms you brought up? And there's a lot of non-hygienic behavior, like signs that require showers or something prior to the entry to the pools and things. Is that part of the what's looked for, the regulation or requirement, or?
Yeah, great
Generally
question.
speaking.
Joe or Jerry, would you like to elaborate on that
Sure.
aspect
So,
of the inspection?
yeah, they have to have a sign that says showers are required. And usually if you go to a pool, it'll have the pool rules sign. And we used to sell those signs, but the pool companies took what we were providing and now they sell it. But if you read the pool rules, one of it is must shower before entering. And then it's up to the pool operator to enforce that.
And I assume this includes hot tubs and other, it doesn't.
Yeah, would you like to elaborate, Joe or Jerry?
Hot tubs are not inspected or licensed.
Even when it sits right next to a pool that is inspected and
Sure.
accessible by the public.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
That is correct. So that is according to current regulations. And I'm going to talk about that here in just a second about historically what had been inspected, what we're currently doing, and kind of what the future may look like for us. So we'll talk more about that here momentarily. But to answer the question, that is correct. Hot tubs do not fall under the regulations of recreational water and swimming pools, even if it's right next to and can be accessed in the same manner. And we'll also identify that hot tubs are one of the areas of greatest risk, even though they go unregulated.
Temperature and
Yeah.
creating the
Such
environment.
of goodies in there.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I was getting at with the whole shower thing. Because there are people, and I've witnessed it at my own gym, the non-hygienic behavior where drop your pants and put on the trunks and go clean yourself in the hot tub.
That's my monthly bath.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Curtis.
Right, next slide, please, Dustin. Okay, so some of the things that we're specifically looking for and that we want to mitigate the risk of, it's not necessarily per se what you would expect when you're thinking about a swimming pool. A lot of it really does have to do with the hygiene that Dr. Furch is referring to, because a lot of that creates and results in the spread of disease, which is the thing that we're really looking to prevent and mitigate. So some of this information is collected from the Center for Disease Control from 1971 through 2020. The top 5 recreational water outbreaks tend to be there listed on the slide. You can see what those are associated with. Most of them being some kind of infection that affects your gastrointestinal system. Skin rashes, Legionella being a respiratory infection heavily associated with hot tubs, and the warm water when it's kept inappropriately or not correctly disinfected, the vapor that comes off of a hot tub can be breathed in and cause respiratory illness, which can be quite severe. That tends to be a problem. And remember that really the goal of the inspection is to prevent illness and injury when using recreational water. It's pretty simple. The goal is to stop the spread of communicable diseases, to prevent potential injuries that could occur from the use of such facilities. And so that's really what we're trying to do and learning to help enforce. All right, that's the next slide. So the history of pool inspections, I wanted to share some of this with you, and Jerry can give his experience or share a little bit more about that. Jerry's been doing this for several decades, I think since the late 1980s. And so he's got quite a bit of experience in doing this and can share a little bit about what he's encountered over the time period. But I wanted to just share a little bit. So historically, Central District Health inspected somewhere between 150 and 200 pools, upwards of 200 pools that we inspected on an annual basis. These pools had an annual inspection that they were required to have. And then we also did complaint investigations. So we were at a minimum of 150 to 200 pool inspections per year, plus whatever complaint inspections were necessary throughout the year. That included, according to the regulations, both Type A and Type B pools. Type A pools are municipal or public pools. So these are your typically either city, county, or state-owned facilities that are operated and owned by some type of entity such as a municipal group or setting. Type B pools, these are private or semi-private public pools, such as in hotels, pools associated with apartments, HOA facilities that home owners associations have put together, pools associated with gyms where people pay memberships to participate and use the recreational facilities. All of those would be considered to be Type B pools, and at one point were inspected and included in that 200 pool annual inspection count. In the late 90s to early 2000s, changes were made by the Idaho legislature to change the types of pools that were regulated. And it eliminated the Type B pools. Those pools were then removed from the regulations as being regulated. They were no longer subject to the types of inspections that the health districts had traditionally been doing. They were no longer required to participate in those inspections and did not have to meet or follow all the same regulations as the Type A pools or the municipal and public pools. So currently, as of today, this year in 2024, Central District Health has the responsibility and jurisdiction over only 36 pools in our 4-county area. So we've dropped from roughly 200 to 36. And we're inspecting those pools on an annual basis, plus any investigations that come from complaints associated with any pools. Now, keep in mind, we will investigate any complaint at any pool. So if a complaint is made about a Type B pool, we will follow up and investigate that, especially if we've identified individuals who have acquired some type of an infection due to the use of the recreational water. That becomes its own epidemiological investigation, as well as an environmental health inspection and complaint investigation to resolve the environmental factors contributing to the illness or infection. And so we will follow up with those, but we are currently only mandated by regulations to inspect the Type A pools, which again are the municipal or public pools. Now, we do have a number of pools that will subject themselves to voluntary inspections because they appreciate the assistance. And like I said on our very first slide, the role of our inspectors is to act as an advisor when it comes to the pool operators regarding illness and injury and how to prevent that. And so many of our facilities within the jurisdiction will opt for a voluntary inspection because they value the knowledge and expertise that our inspectors such as Joe and Jerry bring to them in helping them operate a pool successfully that avoids illness and injury. So we do have some of those as well. But you can see that the vast majority of pools, such as hotels, gyms, HOAs, apartments, hot tubs associated with all of those same facilities, vastly go unregulated. Now, you would imagine if you're traveling through the state of Idaho and you stop at any one of our hotels and you enjoy the hot tub or the swimming pool with your grandkids or kids or whatever, you may assume that that pool is being regulated by some government entity, that it's been licensed or somehow inspected to ensure your safety and to prevent any kind of illness or injury from occurring for those users. But in Idaho, that's not true. That would not be the case. That's not an assumption that can be made in the state of Idaho because of the way our regulations are. Are there any questions about the different types of pools that are regulated or are not regulated?
I don't know if I have a question about, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Biddy.
The aquatic things, fountains and stuff that kids run through, are those regulated?
So currently, Joe or Larry, would you like to elaborate?
The only ones I can think of are the ones that are associated with a regulated pool, specifically, I think the YMCA. Might be the only one because that portion of the water comes from. So something like the YMCA has. I think the one I'm thinking of, and Meridian has 3 or 4 pools of that number, and one of those pools is connected to the splash pad there. So that one technically, as far as the other ones go, the parks and everything, cannot think of any.
So Curtis,
Crypto break,
Yeah.
break in the park one.
Dr. Cole?
yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So are each of these pools tested for the list of microbes that was on the one slide? Are they tested regularly or just yearly on those, or as needed when there's an outbreak?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so each of those pools would go through their annual inspections, and Jerry or Joe can elaborate on just the specifics that they're testing the water quality for. But I don't believe that they're testing for any kind of bacteria or virus at that level, unless there is a complaint that we receive that indicates that someone has become infected or ill due to the use of the facility, in which case we will open an epidemiological investigation to evaluate where that potential risk was acquired and then test for the specific things that are identified by the sick person. So.
Thank you.
So I guess I do have a question. If you went from 150 to 200 pools a year down to 36, that means the revenues come down quite a ways. As far as what is the inspection fee to inspect a pool? I forgot.
Sure.
Yeah.
Our pool inspection fee is $50, and to do a plan review for a new pool construction is $100.
Thank you.
And to my knowledge, those are set in state code as
In
well.
code, yeah, here we
and
go again. Same
Not
with the
managed
fee.
by the individual jurisdictions that actually do them.
You said 200 for plan reviews?
100 for plan reviews.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, next slide, please. There we go. Okay. So the future of pool inspections, what does this look like? So IDAPA 160214 is the IDAPA code that is set forth to regulate the construction and operation of swimming pools. That is the code that we enforce when we do pool inspections. It outlines the 43 criteria that we review and look at, how operators must maintain and operate their facility to reduce the risk of illness and injury. And the problem that we're looking at on the horizon is due to the zero-based regulation review requirements of all regulations within the state of Idaho. These specific sets of regulations are scheduled to to go through the 2025 rulemaking review and then be reviewed by the 2026 legislative review process. As part of the zero-based rulemaking process, if those rules are not renewed and allowed to expire and sunset, then the rules would go away. The indication that we have received from the Department of Health and Welfare is that is something that they are considering. That they are considering the idea of allowing these rules to not proceed through the rulemaking process or through the legislative review and being renewed, but rather making the recommendation that those pool rules be allowed to sunset and expire and no longer exist, which would bring what was once a robust inspection process of close to 200 pools down to 0. And we would have a completely unregulated recreational water industry throughout the state. Now, the problems that could potentially propose is that it puts the public at great risk for infection, illness, injury, of things that are preventable and easily managed through appropriate work with mitigating those strategies with the operators that our pool inspectors work with on a yearly basis. So there's a couple different options that we may have to look at how we want to manage and deal with that in the future as we get to that, if that's indeed the case with what the Department of Health and Welfare decides to do with their rules. But the biggest thing that we need to know and understand is that the potential for the rules to go away does exist. And that the risk to the public, if that were to happen, would just be that there could potentially be widespread communicable diseases that go unregulated and are not kept in check through the annual inspection process and the adequate maintenance and operations of the recreational water facilities. So Dustin, next slide. So what we would recommend then, a couple different things. In the absence of state regulations, we would recommend that either the board or the boards of public health throughout the state work together to either take ownership of or create their own or somehow develop, implement, and enforce some kind of common sense regulations for recreational water facilities. I don't know that we necessarily need to go to one extreme or the other, where we're trying to regulate every drop of water that people try to recreate in throughout the state. But the idea of having zero regulations and letting facilities run as they wish also seems to be an extreme in another direction. It seems like we would be able to come up with some type of regulations that would adequately allow industry to manage and operate and do the things that they want to do, while we still maintain the health, safety, and prevent illness and injury for those recreators that are using the recreational facilities. I would see this type of regulation as being something that is very risk-based, where we identify those facilities that are the most risky. We talked about hot tubs, for example, the unregulated nature of hot tubs. It is where we see the majority of our complaints come from. It is not necessarily from the swimming pools. It's more associated with the hot tubs and the facilities that are in companionship with those facilities. A lot of the splash pads that we see operating tend to be at greater risk, where we see more disease occur because of the use of splash pads, especially those that are out in the open that may not be adequately maintained or have the disinfectants used appropriately, tend to be more risky environments and situations where we see disease occurring more frequently. We did some historical trending and looked that over the last several years, we've had approximately 70 complaints in pools. A majority of those came from hot tub facilities and gym facilities, being the primary places where we get complaints coming from and reports of illness coming from. It's not necessarily from the type A facilities that are currently under regulation. It's primarily coming from those type B facilities that lack regulations and have not been regulated for an immense amount of time. So those are some of the concerns that we have and some of the recommendations that we would like to consider in the future, that if and when it gets to a point that these regulations are not going to exist or won't be enforced or carried by the Department of Health and Welfare, what would the board like to do and what position would we like to put ourselves in to be able to prevent illness and injury for the users of these recreational waters? So that's kind of the message that I'd like to leave, and I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Well, I think, my perspective only as a board member, we're kind of hinged upon, the rulemaking and the legislative review depends on what they do. If they decide, no, we're not going to regulate it, it's do whatever you want, then I think we need to get IB involved, all the districts, and come back with, wait a minute, this isn't going to work. But the thing that keeps going through my mind is the insurance companies, I would assume sooner or later are going to get involved with this. If you have a lot of claims for rashes or illness or, hey, I caught all this and if they got to start paying these claims, they may come back to the state and say, wait a minute, this isn't working. I keep thinking about in our area, Tamarack. And I think the last I heard, Tamarack has about 230 hot tubs in that facility. And they're all owned by privately owned residents, but they're all Airbnbs. So that's part of the amenity is, hey, we have a hot tub too. Well, who in the heck is checking those and watching all that? Probably nobody. But I think right now we got to wait and see what the health and welfare does and what the state does, and then come back, fight that. I don't know why you would want to deregulate that, especially places like the splash park out by Meridian. You see, oh my gosh, hundreds of kids that are in that every day. Whew, you could really get something going.
Yep, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Yeah, to your point, in hot tubs, the most common bacteria is a mycobacteria, not tuberculosis, but rather Mycobacterium avium. And it just thrives in that temperature. And there's a condition known as hot tub lung. And then going to the public pools, Cryptosporidium, which is actually a parasite, which can, be carried in, especially on some foods grown in foreign countries. That can cause an awful diarrhea. These are, common microbes that could be tested for literally $1 or $2 on all of these publicly used hot tubs and pools. So, the cost of testing versus the hospitalization that one gets a couple times a year from these different, again, I guess it is going to be up to the state in terms of how they do regulate it. But otherwise, for a really inexpensive testing, I think we could, save a hospitalization or 2 every summer, which would pay for itself. And that's just my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
First.
Observation. So unlike vaccine manufacturers, hotel chains have liability if they create an environment that is unsafe. So, there is that motivation to at least attempt to fly right because of the insurance that hotel chains or other entities would have to maintain. As far as what to do, we have, as a health district, the ability to actually create regulations, or would it be commissioners in the counties that would have to establish the regulation that then is enforced by the health district?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the health districts have the authority to essentially promulgate rules. We have had rules that were all health districts, so statewide, and then there was a very specific set of rules in North Idaho for the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. And those have expired, and there's something I've learned from their director, Director Kettner, that dealing with water quality, not the swimming water quality, but aquifer water quality, there was some additional steps that made it really complex for them to continue with rules that they had on the books for a long time. So they're pushing that out at the county level, to your point. So that's another option, but the plan right now, Director, just for clarity on how this is probably going to play out, is to eliminate these rules effective July 1 of this coming summer. So the directors have asked his legislative facilitator, Jared Larson, we met with him the other day and said, you know, if you could delay this till July 1 of 26, we would appreciate that so that we have time for our boards of health to get together, which happens once a year, and talk through this and give us a little bit of time to come up with a plan. What we were thinking would be better is if our boards of health chose to regulate as is, or possibly bring it to the fold the problem areas, the areas where we get the most complaints, which hot tubs makes the most sense to me, we would have time to make those adjustments. And if there's a mechanism to transfer that responsibility from the Director of Health and Welfare to the health districts, that would be a preferred path. So I reached out to Jared after we had our discussion with him, because we didn't obviously make a decision. He just said, this is what we're planning to do. And asked him if Director Adams would consider that as an option. And I haven't heard back yet. That was only about a week ago. So as of July 1 of 2025, it's more likely than not those full rules will be eliminated, and all those the 36 that we currently do will be unregulated.
So I have a question, Curtis. So the inspectors go out, they have their criteria already. So to duplicate that may not be as big of a undertaking. Let's do the inspections anyway. And that the environmental health system upgrade includes that already?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, the new system that we are currently in design and development with will include the pool inspections and would transfer what we're currently doing and engaged in now into the new system, and it would hopefully be a seamless operation for us.
So, but it comes to that, I guess, that, you know, you're prepared in that regard.
I don't know, I feel like, you know, we need to keep the program kind of ready to go in case it is, because I think it's gonna come back. Mainly because the insurance company is gonna say, we need this, because we're really stuck liable for anything that happens in that pool or in that hotel or wherever it is. But you start thinking about all the issues that could happen if you don't have a licensed, clean, public swimming facility or a hot tub. Man, it could be huge, really quick. To me, this kind of gets back to the same issue with food fees. With the state deal, and the state's gonna have to make up its mind whether or not they're gonna play hardball, or they're just gonna drop it and let the chips fall where they may, which to me will probably end up closing all the public pools, because they can't. They're not gonna assume that liability, that risk. Yeah, go ahead.
Question, whose responsibility is it to put signage up that says it's not inspected or it is inspected? Like, how would that, I mean, giving some of the responsibility to the person getting in the pool? Like, they're recognizing where they get in, and that works to our
You
advantage.
go right next to the sign that says no lifeguard on duty.
Yeah,
This pool is not inspected.
yeah, but who?
I don't know.
You could
Kind of crazy.
You know, Mr. Chair, do you guys do the inspections like for Wahoo's and Silverwood up north, those huge water parks?
On Central District.
So we do the inspection for Springs, which is
Okay.
part of the same facility, but as far as this, that's they're one of the places that voluntarily wants to be inspected. That Curtis had alluded to earlier. As far as Silver Woods or Silver Springs up north, I'm not sure if they are, because they'd have to voluntarily go out to that jurisdiction and ask.
Well, it's wise to them to volunteer.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree. They're a classic example of a facility that falls outside of their regulatory authority, but volunteers to be inspected for their reputation's sake and for the intent of providing a safe and clean environment for their guests.
What was it? Last year, I can't remember the years anymore. One of the pools, I think it was in Valley County, had swimmer's itch outbreak, and they had a lot of issues with that until they, I don't remember where it was. And I thought, how interesting, you can't even swim. That gets so now, but I don't know, this is something the state, the Department of Health and Welfare are gonna have to decide for us, and then we'll have to react to it afterwards. I think it would certainly be something we bring up at IAB this fall. But we'll hopefully know by then what state's gonna do or not do. But
I'm concerned that, you know, the complaints aren't in the type A, they're in the type B. They might not be in the type A because they're they're regulated. If we were to not regulate those, then the complaints may include those addressed.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Totally accurate. The majority of the complaints that we see come in and that we then turn into an investigation with both an epidemiological component and an environmental health risk factor typically come from the type B facilities. Hot tubs that are unregulated, gyms that are unregulated, the hotels that are unregulated is where the majority of the complaints come from. The type A municipal public pools that are annually inspected and the facilities that volunteer for inspection routinely do not have complaints associated with them, and we see very little issue with in terms of the spread of disease or injury.
okay, anybody else want to add anything to this? Doesn't make any sense, but maybe it'll get fixed. Hopefully. Thanks, Curtis. Thanks, Jerry, Joe. And move on down. The next one is not an action item. This is updates from the Idaho Association of Board of Health. And we had an annual meeting in Idaho Falls when was that, October? And it was pretty well attended. A lot of districts only had one or two people there, but we kind of went through the resolutions. I don't know, I guess Crystal and Dr. Furch, you guys were there too. At your two cents, how you felt that way?
I mean, it was a great experience. I was the speakers, the directors of the different organizations. It was nice to hear from them. Several fronts, but it seemed a little organized. Maybe the structure's not there. That's fixed. That's just me outside coming in. You know, I don't know what it's been like in the past.
Well, I think the one issue that kind of was at the time was a good feeling was we had a lot of discussion about food fees. And the Idaho Association of County Commissioners, or IAC, said we're going to take on the food fees this year in the legislature, which is great. But then I see not too soon after that they came up with their top 5 priorities and resolutions they're going to go forward with, and none of it included food fees. So I think that's been shoved back on the back burner for IAC again. That's kind of an issue that I've been talking with Seth about. That was kind of important to us. The feel-good thing was that it's not only an issue for the health districts, but it's an issue for county commissioners as well, because they can see it affects their own budgets. So we're getting free lobbying basically because of our membership with IAC. But I don't know if that's going to happen this year, which is kind of disappointing. Greg, you want to add anything?
So, of course, again, I'm the new guy on the block, and that was my first one of those. I guess my initial brush with being there and watching the flow of the 2 days, maybe I missed something, but I'm not certain I was convinced of the utility of it, of, you know, I mean, we just addressed it here about asking for a delay in the pool regulations for another year because the Association of Health Boards has a meeting once a year. So it seems like as an organization, that would there be a tendency to be slow to react by it, the way it's structured now. My opinion possibly was that a lot of the presentations, I mean, I really liked Alex Adams' presentation personally. The direction I think he wants to take health and welfare, in my opinion, overall is phenomenal. But could that presentation have been, you know, zoomed in to each health district where the entire board gets to receive that information, not just the limited number of people that chose to attend those that two-day meeting. And so I guess that was my initial opinion or brush of with the two-day event.
Well, and that's an interesting comment because that's been brought up in the past over the years. Instead of doing this in, you know, Twin Falls, or Idaho Falls, Coeur d'Alene, or wherever, can we do it as an online type of, so that all of us can meet, sit here and have a camera and give our 2 cents worth. But I think technologically wise, I think it would really slow things down doing it that way. We all know how much issues we all have with technology. Trying to include everybody, I think that would be a challenge, but there's been some LABs in the past. It's like, oh, yeah, I don't think we got much out of this one.
Well,
And then there's been others been great.
my comment on that wasn't necessarily about the organization trying to conduct business via Zoom. Again, maybe I almost question the utility of the organization. But the presentations individually, like the Alex Adams presentation or the other ones, could be zoomed in quite easily directly to the entire board and not just the 2 or 3 of us that managed to make it to Idaho Falls for that two-day event.
Well, and we did have a pretty hot discussion with Seth Krieg and IAC about what are we getting for our 12 grand every year. And that's when they came back and said, hey, we're going to really push forward the food fees. IAC is going to support that. We're going to do all that for you. But now it's like, I don't know if that's going to happen this year or not.
And 12 grand is the amount we spend to participate, right?
Among all 7 districts, so we pay 1/7 of that.
That's cumulative.
So 12,000 total, or that's our portion of it? Total.
Russ, you want to add anything to it? You were there.
Well, I guess just a general comment, having on this job for a while, and in the annual meetings is I don't know if I had a frustration, but is we talk about these issues, public health policy, you know, you're a policy making board, you set fees, you do a lot in your respective health districts. And this is that opportunity to get together and collaborate and come up with ideas as far as what is it that what do we want to focus on? So this presented to you the fact that our swimming pools, recreational water managed by some entity is no longer going to be regulated. So we could say, no problem, they'll figure it out on their own, just like basically what happened in the year 2000. That's when the pools were deregulated for the most part. Or you all could get together and say, you know, we don't think that's right. We think based on what Curtis just presented and Jerry and Joe that it does make sense. It doesn't make any more sense to allow them to be run on their own with food establishments. You know, they're private businesses, and when they have major foodborne outbreaks, especially small ones, the big ones, like you all remember the Jack in the Box outbreak that took place that killed people died from that. And they're still in business, but if that happens to a small business, they're gone. Somebody else will come in and take their place and run it, either good or bad. My point is, we've been talking about the food establishment license fees for forever, like, yeah, and what gets done. Well, you see what gets done, you know, and this year, to your point, there was the flurry of conversation about it, and we're gonna push forward this year, and Commissioner Zach Brooks from,
Yep.
I think you had sat by him. He has some connections with the legislature, and I don't know what'll come of that, but I think it kind of goes back to the wellness conversation. What's the outcomes? What are you getting with if you provide a financial incentive? What are we getting out of the Idaho Association of Local Boards of Health? What policy changes have been made in the 19 years that I've been here as a direct result of those resolutions that are discussed and passed? What do we get from IAC and that's been discussed about every single year since that time. I think it could work. I guess that's the bottom line, but it's going to require an effort by all the local boards of health and all the members to say something like, we're not okay deregulating pools in Idaho. We have a public health responsibility to people who live here, people who pass through the state. So we're going to organize around that. And Betty Ann, as our executive council member representing this body, should be provided some guidance and say, Betty Ann, we don't think that's okay. You know, if there's any way you can help advocate along with the district directors to make sure those don't get deregulated, so at least have a chance to discuss, that would be effective, right? That would be effective use of the Idaho Association and the representative each board has during the 364 other days that happen throughout the year, and especially during the legislative session. But it just hasn't happened. It hasn't happened. And I think if we're going to continue to operate as we have, you know, it's ultimately up to the boards, not the directors, but I don't see much value in it. And yeah. So
I think the only good I can see of it is where we can get with other districts and kind of share our similar problems. Yeah, you know, I sometimes wonder if maybe we should have our own lobbyist. That's gotta concentrate on our issues, not all the county issues. And that's what's happening now. You know, we just kind of get pushed down the list every year.
right.
Well, I think IAC pales when it comes to the food lobby. They're just so outgunned.
That might be changing. Trump is successful at getting some of the appointees. The food lobby might have a lot less.
Well, I still think like the swimming pool issue, that sooner or later, the insurance company are saying, we're tired of these lawsuits. We can't pay these big claims for, you know, dirty pools or dirty restaurants or whatever. They have to do this, but it's gonna take heat from the other side of the checkpoint.
But we know there are gonna be outbreaks.
Yeah,
It's not a cheap thing, yeah.
and I'm thinking, boy, I don't think I'm ever gonna swim in a public pool anymore.
Thanks for that much.
Yeah, but that was fun. Okay, so, yeah, and this is also in your packet. There's a lot of good.
Yeah. So I was just gonna, speaking of the value, that's the next agenda item. And the three of you who were able to attend this year went through the exercise, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this is very specific to the Idaho Association of Local Boards of Health. It is what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and the opportunities and threats. So this was a compilation of that exercise that the executive director of Idaho Association of Counties led, Seth Gregg, and then he provided this back to all of us and to the boards of health. So
You have to break. No.
no, it's just more, I guess I'm sharing it with all of you. The Executive Council Chair is Commissioner Vicky Purdy from Adams County, so she will be leading the meetings with Betty Ann being CDH's representative.
And we start the 14th of January and go on a weekly basis as needed.
Yep. So this is one of the things that she had asked, she had asked through Director Zog from District 3, which Adams is part of District 3, if we could review this, and if you had any input to get it back to, I can get it back to Nikki, and then she'll compile that from all the districts, and then it'll be one of the early on executive council discussions in January. So I don't know how you want to do this. If you're like, yep, looks good, or if you have anything you want to add to this today or between now and middle of January, if you could share that with me, and then I'll make sure that District 3 gets that to be part of the discussion. That's why it's on the agenda. District 3 asked for it through, or Commissioner Purdy asked for it through their director.
Well, I think there's some really good, I guess, under the opportunities section. First one is by holding the annual meeting in Boise during the legislative session. I think that would be an executive council kind of an issue. You know, and you guys are gonna meet once a week on that. But the issue I had, okay, if you don't like what Department of Health Welfare is gonna do, by the time you get it back to us, which is usually after the legislature, so maybe sometimes when it's too late to react to
Right.
that.
Well, and that was one reason we changed the state meeting to October, so we could kind of get our ducks in a row before the legislature.
Did that this year, I thought, with the food fees and all that, but then
Anyway,
it kind of got dropped. And maybe what we need to do is, I don't know, write a letter to the IAC saying, hey, how come this was not a top 5 priority this year? Because we were told it was gonna be. And I don't know how to proceed on that. I still think it's worthwhile for all of us to get together and share our common concerns, but the other issue is that, you know, if budgets do get tight, counties, they're gonna start saying, we need to pull back on some of this funding. So some of this may end up getting axed because you're not getting as much from the counties think you're gonna get. So I know in our county, a lot of county commissioners look at it because the assessors have a conference 2 or 3 times a year, the treasurer does. Commissioners, you can go almost any month of the year to go to some conference somewhere if the county wants to pay for it. And pretty soon you start looking at that going, you know, we need to limit that budget because it's kind of gotten out of hand over the years. These trips are, could be $2,000-3,000 an employee to send them off to some conference, in Louisiana or Florida or somewhere so that they can be updated or be trained. I'm open to any other suggestions if you guys want to. This came from Vicky Purdy. This did, or this was a compilation of everybody.
Vicky Purdy is what I had on my email.
Yeah, so she,
Yeah, Vicky.
yeah, but this was the compilation of the conversation that happened at the meeting. But this was,
We were all up writing and doing our.
thicker notes.
Things, yeah, I remember that.
So this is a result of that. Commissioner Purdy is the chair, which also rotates, depends on who the host is. So she's the chair of the executive council till the next Idaho Association of Local Boards of Health meeting, whenever that happens. So what she asked for is for input from each of the boards of health as we all meet, like we're meeting now. Do you have anything you want to add to this for me to share back that can be included in discussion that she's planning to have at probably the first meeting in January that you.
Well, and she requested that. Remember, we used to get together in Boise for in person on one of those.
Right.
And I did get that request from Nikki too.
Yeah. That's a midwinter IAC conference is what it's coordinated with. You know, like late
That's usually February, isn't it?
Thought it was late January, but it might be
I think they
February.
just, this year, I think they did move it to later, or earlier to January, but I'll have to look.
But going back to this IAC dropping the food thing year after year, would it be worth our time to say, hey, you know, we were promised this, what happened?
Well, I think that's a very legitimate question. And I don't know if it should, I think it should come from the executive group, you guys, because you represent all 7 districts.
Right,
Be
and
stronger.
now my problem with that is that will be a little bit late probably, because the session will be going on. I wonder what kind of reply we'd get if we sent a letter to IAC from our district. I don't know.
Well, and I think it's a legitimate question for all the districts. Hey, do you guys want to stick with IAC? Or do we want to figure out another way to get our issues in front of the legislature? Because it's not happening
And that has recurred year after year.
after year,
after
and we
year.
get the same kind of story.
That'll cost more money. Outside of that.
Yeah, Seth did bring up, well, if you hired outside lobbyists, it's 30 to 50,000 a year.
Well, what are we getting for our 12 now?
What positives come from it?
Pardon me?
What positives come from being part of this?
Other than just sharing similar issues with other districts.
Is that gone anymore? I mean, or is it, are we gaining?
Well, the biggest issue for all my years have been on is spent food fees. Because the counties now are subsidizing that almost $2 million a year, and the counties are saying, wait a minute. No other industry do we subsidize that inspection. Is my concern, if they're gonna take away swimming pool inspections, they could take away food fees. And you know who's gonna catch the hell for this? It's gonna be the local districts. Why aren't you guys doing this? Well, because the state doesn't want us to do it anymore. Big issues. How do you guys feel about, I think you should, personally, I think you should discuss it in executive council and see how the other districts feel.
Bring it up.
And bring it up, hey, we don't feel like we're getting good representation by AC.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to think about more funds, and raising that fee and hiring our own.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And for like Dr. Birch and Crystal, we have those weekly calls during, and who's ever on the executive council, that would be me this year, has been Elle. And Russ joins those too, what's the directors. And IAC is supposed to be on this.
Well, I mean, you guys might want to put IEC up on the hot seat, say, hey, how come you guys dropped this?
I think that's absolutely appropriate for the first time we have a meeting.
See what they come back with. Okay, anything else on this? We're gonna move on then to the director's report. Kind of covered. You kind of covered it, didn't you?
Yeah,
Some of it.
a little bit. So I guess there were 2 personnel issues that were still pending and those have been resolved. I just want to let you know that. The resolutions, there were 3 resolutions. There was lots of resolutions discussed. And take care.
Merry Christmas.
There were some that were updated, like around senior cognitive health, allowed to stay in place, and immunizations, but I'll just get to the 3 that were new. So there's a resolution to clarify the roles pertaining to solid waste. So right now, that big debate, right? Elmore County, the one private landfill, but it's still, yeah, so we're not clear on what Director Burns, he was one of the presenters at the meeting that you attended, what exactly they're planning to do. But right now, the concern that the districts have had, and in this particular case, it worked out fine because we did the inspections of the landfill that we're talking about of Simcoe Road and found violations, but it was a private entity that we were able to go to the county and say, look, this is it was ongoing, unresolved issues with lack of daily cover, lack of doing anything with waste tires that they were to do per agreement, continuing to accept waste tires when they weren't supposed to.
CDH was doing all the work. But the, DEQ's a regulatory,
Yeah,
they're not doing.
yeah.
Think about,
Yeah. So that was a resolution that passed, but Director Burns, if you recall, the number I heard him come up with was around 800,000. They'd have to hire more staff, to basically do the work we're doing. We did the calculations here, and even during a really busy year, which obviously this has been, we spent about $30,000. Typically, we don't spend that much. Multiplied by 7, it doesn't add up to quite the dollar amount that he was proposing, and I don't know what they did, for their analysis. So there's going to be more discussion. I reached out to Director Byrne because he had indicated at that meeting there was going to be some draft legislation they were working on, and I have not heard back from him. And that was maybe close to a week ago, or when that request was made. So I'll share that, and of course it'll come to you. It'll come to all of you, but Betty Ann will be the one that will represent our position and see where that goes. Resolution to allow for public health district banking flexibility. So that came from Public Health District 3. Many of you are probably aware they're as frustrated with LUMA as our district and all the other health districts, probably most of the state agencies. So what they learned when they said, well, can we go out and develop our own finance management system and do that in place of LUMA? And the feedback that they received was, no, you have to work through the state treasurer's office. So unless you set up an account with a separate banking, basically a bank like Wells Fargo or I don't know, ICCU or whoever that would be. So that resolution was approved, but it was discussed as, let's just hold off until we can see what happens with LUMA. So that was the general consensus of the Idaho Association of Local Boards of Health. And then there was the third resolution, which you all approved, and we pushed forward, which was the one for WIC to get data from the state so we know who the individuals are who are eligible but not participating, and then let us do the outreach through like the Beth's team with the community outreach efforts. And that one passed. I don't remember, there was hardly any discussion or none at all.
And I want to let you know that shortly after that, as a data care facility, we received something in the mail. It was actually from Boise State through the Department of Health and Welfare, having people do the survey, why they're not, to push it out to parents, why they are, which I thought that was beneficial. I did that as a daycare owner, but I don't know why they didn't reach out to the ICCP clients, but I know that those have declined because of his budgeting. So, I thought it was great, but I wonder if it was also pushed out to those clients as well, because it's the same families.
Right. Yeah, and we've been working with them, Office of Department of Public Health. I can't remember the exact title, but Mac McCullough and his team have been working on this for a while. We were collaborating with them on some initial work and to do focus groups to try to figure out why would 55% of people who are eligible not be participating, to define that, because that's been but it just doesn't make sense.
Well, they, on the survey, it's QR codes, you scan it and you get a gift card for taking the survey.
Okay.
Is how they were promoting it.
Yeah.
I have to look at the mail again. I'm pretty certain it came from Boise State. When I received it, I was like,
yeah,
I thought that was because we had never discussed that, but so they're trying to get information back.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I don't know either. Like I said, we have pretty good relationship with that group at Boise State University through our agency. So the good news is the data that we're to get from health and welfare it's was to be delivered earlier in the fall, then November, then now December. And we haven't received it yet, but they did develop a toolkit, which was using other states like the state of Vermont that has considerably higher participation rates versus eligible. And we just got that yesterday.
Oh,
So that's good. The toolkit, so we know, okay, like what specifically did these other states do to allow them to be successful? Beth and then some part of Laurel's team, because she supervises customer service, we're going to be getting together early January and develop a strategy so that when we do get the data, we can deploy that. And I'm hoping we'll get the data, which is who are these people? That's been really the great unknown. So good thing this resolution did pass, and we'll be able to share that with Director Adams. He seems very supportive of this anyway, which is good. We've been working on it for probably close to 10 years. So big deal. It'll be great for families, people that come to WIC, over to our vaping cessation. They get connected with Lisa and her team and oral health. And yeah. We are, since our last meeting, our communications and marketing manager, Maria Ortega, who usually attended these meetings, she left and she's now working for the city of Boise. And we recruited and found a great candidate to replace her, and her name is Stephanie Borders, and she starts on December 30th. So I'll have her join us at the February meeting and introduce her. But we're the executive leadership team. We did the interviews, and I think she's going to be fantastic. She has a pretty extensive career working in lots of different environments, including road projects and dealing with the public on how much they always appreciate all the work of organizations like Department of Transportation and ACHD. So we're excited. Last thing, today, we're inputting the incentives, retention incentives that the board approved back in August. So I sent out an email this morning before the board meeting, just reminding everybody what those amounts will be, and it'll be paid on January 3rd. So just reemphasize my appreciation and our staff's appreciation for the board allowing us to do that. A lot of that money came from a public health infrastructure grant. And I think we have one more year, two more,
Or two.
one or two.
Yeah, two initially, but it may be shortened. We'll have a meeting about that early next year.
Yeah. So it's kind of a big deal, right? That's when the bills start rolling in, not long after that, for people who spend money around the holidays. So I just really appreciate your generosity in allowing us to do that for our staff. And that is all I have.
hey, any questions for Russ?
I just have one thing to say.
Sure.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy New Year. And Corey, thank you for putting these together. You had a good trainer.
I tried to emulate so much of it. The item you guys got is one of the apparel accessory items we had available to employees to order. They didn't a piece of apparel, so it's a Stanley Cup that has CDH's logo on it. So hope you guys enjoy.
It's a joy to just be, to work with you folks.
Absolutely. Folder opposed to the other one, because then I can actually file them, just so you, of course.
You bet.
I was like, oh, that was cheap.
I keep mine
Simple things.
in my truck. I have a little slot. And it's so full, it's like I need to create a file cabinet in the back of my truck. So
Yeah, I thought,
roll
well,
it out.
it's like, it's easier to see it.
Yeah, yes.
Reading it. I
Good deal.
appreciate that.
Could be able to go back and research that. And we're at the point of the meeting for public comment. Is there anyone online or in the audience? Mr. Furch?
Well, I have a question about public comments that are disseminated via the email. Is there a standard? Do we have conversation about those that come our direction at any point?
I'm assuming you're talking about the coronavirus comments.
Well, no, the totality of them. There's a person at the National Guard that wants to have interaction.
I can see that one.
And, you know, there was a number of them, but yes, also the coronavirus one. And I just hadn't seen us have conversation about any of those that have been disseminated through the months here. Is there a standard for, you know, we give people here the opportunity to have their 3 minutes. Do we have a protocol for when or if we address whatever it is that comes and is disseminated through those emails?
Well, I can tell you how it normally works in the past is if we get a lot of comments on a particular issue and some of the board or a lot of the board members feel like we need to discuss this, then we get it on a future agenda, either as an action item or an information, and then kind of go from there. But get it up to the board and see how everyone else feels about it and then go from there. So it's not like we don't ignore stuff, but I did get the one about the mountain home issue. And I think that's something maybe Russ can talk to about now, as far as maybe some collaboration there.
With the National Guard
Yeah.
personnel and.
So when we see things like that, so I reached out to her. We've already met with I guess Beth, were you here? You weren't here yet. So we met prior to Beth joining on November 12th, met with her and got her connected with her health promotion and health policy team, learned what her interest was. And so we don't, I mean, some of you remember I think we probably had about 3,000 comments at one time during the heyday.
Yes.
Of comments. So we see all of those, obviously, and when it's something like, hey, I want to know where I can get my septic permit, and it comes through that means you don't usually see those, the National Guard one or the Air Guard and Army Guard in Idaho. So we meet with those individuals. So we don't just leave them sit, but there's other ones like what Commissioner Hasbrook mentioned. If the board has interest in, you see themes, that's really up to you. And you obviously can work through the chair or me and say, I want this on the agenda.
But for instance, the complaint about the recycling smell, that gets directed to the immediate entity and
internal immediately. And if it's not us, we refer it out to a partner. That particular concern, where our staff have already addressed it. Yep. Yeah, it's a good question. So it is kind of, once we started accepting those comments, there was we think you should keep requiring masks and we think you shouldn't. That was like, okay, thank you for 3,000 of you. And it is important, right? There was no doubt there were strong opinions about it, but it wasn't like odors and eye irritation.
Well, I remember those 400 or 500 a day email time.
So that's a great question. We do address them if they're relevant, directly relevant to our operations, and we make sure we, reach out to community members who submit those. And yep.
And I think it's really important for the board members to understand that if you feel like something serious enough to talk about it, get with Russ or Corey, get it on an agenda as an action item. And even if we don't take action, if we do take action, we can vote on it then. If it's not listed as an action item, we can't vote on it, but we can certainly discuss it. And feel free to add it to the agenda. I think that's what we're here for. Okay. Is there anyone else online? Then this being the last item on our agenda, no other discussion. I will adjourn the meeting. Good to see everybody. Everybody have a Merry Christmas.
Yes, likewise.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank you.
It's feeling better.
I'm working on it. Now I gotta nurse the